Chapter 4487. Yes, it's me, I'm too stubborn. The man gave a low laugh. Since this is your choice, I will respect it, but, your wedding, I will not attend. Ah goo. The lady wanted to say something. But she was interrupted by the man. Phone goo, don't be so cruel to me. The lady choked for a moment. The man turned around and left without hesitation. The wind brought the man slightly cold words. If you wish for your wedding to proceed smoothly, don't expect me to appear. After the man left, the lady stood at the same spot for a while, staring at the direction where the man left for a long time. After some time, she sighed faintly. She raised her hand and caressed her tummy, her red lips curled and her tone was filled with gentleness. Your godfather Ah Goo will definitely meet the woman who belongs to him. One day, he will understand my feelings today, the feelings of having you. She could tell. The lady truly loved that man. And she truly doted on the child in her tummy. After that, the lady also left. Yiqing Luo was still hiding in the lush branches for a while before she slowly came out. That lady dressed in a fiery red dress earlier, she looked a little familiar. She didn't know if it was an illusion. She felt as though she had seen her somewhere before. As for the other man, not to mention that face, she absolutely couldn't remember wrongly. Blood-bone barbaric king. That man's face was exactly the same as the head she saw on the blood-bone barbaric king's bones. The only difference was that the head's face was much older. One was around 40 years old. One was around 20 years old. This man with the blood-bone barbaric king's face looked at most in his early 20s. Nirvana Realm, West Continent, Three Springs City, blood-bone barbaric king? Yiqing Luo's mind strung together all these matters. Suddenly, an exaggerated thought surfaced in her mind. This place, could it be blood-bone barbaric king's memory? She entered this space from the blood-bone barbaric king's ancestral hall. That faint light was actually not some transportation array, but the entrance to the blood-bone barbaric king's memory? Where she was now. It was all blood-bone barbaric king's memory. So, the real purpose of the Abyss Palace was to look for the barbaric blood-bone king's memory? Why was that? Forget it, even if she racked her brains, she might not be able to understand. He could only continue to see if there was anything in the memories of the blood-bone barbaric king that would interest the Palace of Darkness. At this moment, Yiqing Luo only felt a deafening roar coming from the sky. The entire earth began to shake violently. Everything in front of him began to change dramatically. Soon, it was completely covered by darkness. She didn't have time to react. Light returned to his eyes. The scene changed once again. At this moment, she was standing on a blood-stained land. Corpses were strewn all over the ground, and the stench of blood filled her nose. This was a battlefield. Moreover, it was a vast battlefield. As far as the eye could see, it was a reign of terror. Even the air seemed to be dyed red. This kind of scene change made Yiqing Luo almost certain where she was. This was definitely not a normal space. Her gaze searched everywhere, trying to find the traces of the blood-bone barbaric king. As long as she found the blood-bone barbaric king, she would be able to find out what the plot of this scene was. This book came from Chapter 4488. She had just moved her feet. Her hand was suddenly grabbed by someone. A dignified voice sounded from behind, "Who are you? Why are you here?" Then, the man pulled her over forcefully. Yiqing Luo turned her head back and saw a group of soldiers dressed in battle armor, filled with blood qi. The person who grabbed her arm should be a general. Yiqing Luo was stunned. Where did they pop out from? Why didn't she sense their approach? Bring her down for investigation. That general saw Yi Qing Luo keeping quiet and impatiently threw her towards the group of soldiers behind him. A straight man, totally without any protective feelings for the fairer sex. The soldiers supported Yi Qing Luo and escorted her to the other side of the battlefield. Yi Qing Luo hurriedly cried out, "Wait, wait." She looked at that general. "Where is this place?" General Wei's solemn face revealed a suspicious expression. His gaze was as sharp as a torch as he stared deeply at Yi Qing Luo. "Young lady, there's no use in pretending to be crazy, accept the investigation obediently." Yi Qing Luo. She really didn't know where this place was. The soldiers were about to drag her away again. Yi Qing Luo could only ask directly, "Do you know the Bloodbone Barbaric King? Where is he?" "Bloodbone Barbaric King?" The general murmured these 4 words softly as he raised his brows slightly. "You're talking about that bone lord who refines blood bones and uses them to swallow the god's body?" Right. It's Bone Lord." Yi Qing Luo's eyes lit up. So, the name Bone Lord wasn't given by him in the Heaven Realm. But his real name was Bone Lord. The general's expression turned extremely gloomy as his gaze sharpened. "What's your relationship with Bone Lord?" Yi Qing Luo. The atmosphere seemed a little wrong. The general's expression was obviously not right. She mentioned the Bloodbone Barbaric King, which made them even more suspicious of her. But this also meant that these people were indeed related to the Bloodbone Barbaric King. This space was indeed the Bloodbone Barbaric King's memory. Just as Yi Qing Luo was racking her brains to think of how to answer this question, suddenly, the smoke of battle and a terrifying profound light soared into the sky. That burst of powerful pressure shook Yi Qing Luo's heart tightly, as though it was being squeezed by something fiercely. Oh no! Bone Lord is starting to defy the heavens again. Go! Stop Bone Lord! General's expression sunk as he looked deeply at Yi Qing Luo. Seeing Yi Qing Luo's pained expression due to the surrounding profound rays, his frown deepened as he threw the man to one of the soldiers. Then, he quickly led the rest of the soldiers towards the direction where the black rays had come from. The soldiers who were left behind held on to Yi Qing Luo as they brought her towards the direction of the camp. On the way, Yi Qing Luo started to worm information from the soldiers. The general was very shrewd, he could not be tricked. But with just a few sentences from the soldier, Yi Qing Luo managed to get the information out of him. As it turned out, she was currently at the border of the God Realm and the Heaven Realm. This was a war in the God world. The reason was, Bone Lord used his divine body as nourishment to extend his life and increase his strength. Using other God Realms people's flesh and blood to strengthen his own actions had violated the balance of Heaven Way. Hence, the Emperor of the God Emperor sent his army to suppress it. These soldiers were all sent by the Emperor of the God Emperor to stop Bone Lord's evil deeds. Listening to the soldiers' words, Yi Qing Luo inexplicably felt that the plot was somewhat familiar. Hurry up and read the latest update. Download address, phone reading. Chapter 4489. Wait a minute. She remembered that when Xiaofan first met the Bloodbone Barbaric King, he had mentioned this incident. The Bloodbone Barbaric King had privately used the god's body as nourishment, causing chaos in the God realm. After that, the Emperor of God sent his army to suppress it, but they all became nourishment for the Bloodbone Barbaric King and were completely annihilated. The incident that Xiaofan had mentioned at that time. Was it this incident now? These soldiers were about to be completely annihilated. After that, the Emperor of God personally joined the battle and annihilated the Bloodbone Barbaric King? How did she end up in the Bloodbone Barbaric King's memory? Outside the camp, the majestic and terrifying profound wave was about to destroy the heavens and earth. The battle situation was getting more and more urgent. The soldiers could tell that Yi Qing Luo was a weak cultivator. On top of that, she had a beautiful face that could topple cities. She was born with an advantage. the soldiers couldn't bear to tie her up. They only reminded her to stay in the camp and not to run around, then closed the door and rushed to the battlefield. Yi Qing Luo naturally wouldn't be so obedient. After the soldiers left, she operated the divine phoenix profound heart jade to protect her heart meridians and then quietly left the camp. She was now in the blood-bone barbaric king's memory. The first thing to do was to find the blood-bone barbaric king, to know the real core of this memory. The camp's back door was slightly further away from the battlefield. The remaining power of the profound wave didn't come over. Yi Qing Luo didn't feel too much pressure, squeezing her heart. This battle was indeed extremely tragic. Where Yi Qing Luo walked past, corpses were strewn all over the place. She was expressionless, totally unaffected by these bloody scenes. After walking for about a quarter of an hour, suddenly, the ground trembled, and countless fissures appeared. Hard bones protruded out from the cracks. The moment Yi Qing Luo saw those bones, her body instinctively leaped up and borrowed the force to fly into the sky. Following that, she hurriedly summoned Qi. Luckily, although this was the blood-bone barbaric king's memory space, but it didn't restrict her power. She immediately flipped over and sat on Qi's back. Qi hovered in mid-air. Yi Qing Luo lowered her head to look below. Bone after bone emerged from the ground. They were so densely packed that they looked like a spider web. Wherever it went, it sucked the broken limbs and bones on the ground into its bones. The bones were like starving beasts, devouring the corpses on the ground in large mouthfuls. And, along with the bone devouring, the bloody bones gradually turned red. The joints were still stained with drops of blood. It was the blood bone of the blood-bone barbarian king. The barbaric blood-bone king absorbed all the corpses on the battlefield. The blood bones began to shrink back. Yi Qing Luo rubbed Qi's big head and motioned it to follow. Soon, Qi followed the retreating blood bones and arrived outside a huge cave. The blood bones shrank back into the cave. Yi Qing Luo leaped down from Qi's body and Qi turned into a palm-sized kitten and stood on Yi Qing Luo's shoulder. A man and a beast quietly entered the cave. It was pitch black inside the cave. Yi Qing Luo's night vision was not bad, she could barely see the things around her in the cave. In addition, there was the rustling sound of the bloody bones retracting and rubbing against the ground. Yi Qing Luo also followed up. She didn't know how long they had walked. Yi Qing Luo estimated that they should have reached the deepest part of the cave. That sound of the bloody bones rubbing against the ground stopped. Yi Qing Luo immediately held her breath and concealed all her presence as she quietly moved forward. Chapter 4490. Indistinctly, she could hear a deep groan coming from the front, as though it was enduring a huge pain. In the quiet and spacious cave, an extremely soft echo was heard. Yi Qing Luo's approach didn't attract the attention of the people inside. She was nearing the direction of the sound. The nearer she got, the more Yi Qing Luo could feel the dense evil qi in the air. Until the front was no longer a winding passageway, but a spacious cave. The densely packed bloody bones were attached to the steep stone walls like a spiderweb. Yi Qing Luo didn't get any nearer. She had crossed hands with the blood-bone barbaric king previously, so she was very clear. Once she touched the blood bones, she would be discovered by the blood-bone barbaric king. She sized up the densely packed blood bones in front of her, searching for the blood-bone barbaric king's head. The muffled groans of pain continued to ring out. Yi Qing Luo followed the sound. Very quickly, she saw the blood-bone barbaric king's head in the densely packed blood-bone web. The blood-bone barbaric king still looked so young. His handsome face was constantly contorted as he suffered great pain. The air was filled with the stench of blood. Yi Qing Luo discovered. The blood bones which had appeared on the battlefield and absorbed the corpses on the battlefield, were making a cracking sound as they merged with the blood bones in the cave. Each of the blood bones were stained with sticky blood or flesh, intertwining and merging with each other. The entire space was filled with the cracking sound of bones colliding or breaking, which was extremely horrifying. And following this sound, the blood-bone barbaric king's groan and pain became even more intense. Nobody knew how much time had passed. Only then did that painful groan slowly stop. The blood-bone barbaric king's heavy panting sound was extremely clear. Sweat dripped down from his forehead. Bone 1. The blood-bone barbaric king panted heavily. Very quickly, a figure appeared out of thin air among the densely packed blood bones. "How is it?" Blood-bone barbaric king asked. Bone 1 cupped his fists. "It's done, everything is fine now." The blood-bone barbaric king heaved a sigh of relief as he slowly closed his eyes. His mood also relaxed a lot. Gui pursed his lips tightly. His cold face was full of confusion. "Bone Lord, I have something to say." The barbaric blood-bone king did not open his eyes. "I know what you want to say. There's no need to say more. I really don't understand why the Bone Lord had to use such a method." Bone 1 said stubbornly. "The Bone Lord clearly knows that she won't be grateful to you, and she doesn't know how much pain you've suffered because of her. You've placed yourself in opposition to her. Shut up." The barbaric blood-bone king suddenly opened his eyes, which were filled with rage. Gui knelt down abruptly. This subordinate was just feeling injustice for Bone Lord. Everything Bone Lord did was for her, but she wanted to kill you. The blood-bone barbarian king's eyes were filled with coldness. Gui knelt there fearlessly. "I really don't understand. The person who caused this situation is her. But now, you have to commit murder for the sake of the evil creature she created." Bang! Before Gui could finish his words, he was thrown out by a piece of blood bone. Yiqing Luo hurriedly turned sideways and shrunk into the darkness. Very quickly, a petite figure scuttled out from the darkness. The lady helped Gui up and said in a trembling voice, "Bone Lord, please calm down. I'll bring Gui down now." End of this chapter. Chapter 4491. After the lady finished her words, she didn't help him down immediately. Silence for a moment. There was no response from the cave. The lady then hurriedly helped him up and left speedily. Perhaps the both of them were afraid that the blood-bone barbaric king would regret it and only wanted to leave. No one noticed Yiqing Luo, who was hiding in the dark not too far away. When they passed by Yiqing Luo, could vaguely hear the lady's suppressed reprimand, "You know that Bone Lord loves her deeply, so why did you intentionally mention her in front of him? She doesn't appreciate it at all. Bone Lord's sacrifice is not worth it." Bone 1 felt heartache for his master's sacrifice. The lady continued, "But Bone Lord feels that it's worth it." The both of them were still talking about something. But after a distance, Yiqing Luo couldn't hear it clearly. But what Yiqing Luo could confirm was the she they spoke of should be the woman named Feng Gu, who was dressed in a fiery red robe. Listening to their conversation, it seemed like the blood-bone barbaric king made use of the god's body as nourishment. All for that lady named Feng Gu. In the previous memory, wasn't it their West Continent's Three Springs city? Feng Gu was pregnant and about to get married to her beloved man. Why would she need the blood-bone barbaric king to use such a method to help her? Moreover, Feng Gu apparently didn't know that the blood-bone barbaric king was using such a method to help her. But because of the blood-bone barbaric king's change, it created a barrier between them, standing on opposite sides. Yiqing Luo was thinking. Suddenly, a blood bone wrapped around her ankle. The icy cold sticky feeling instantly made Yiqing Luo's hair stand up. Her expression changed as she swiftly raised her head and looked at the cave. She saw a head, speedily following the blood bone on the rock wall, sliding towards her. Yiqing Luo wanted to evade it. But the icy cold blood bone beneath her feet was sucking her hard, making her unable to move at all. He could only look on helplessly as the head quickly rushed towards his face, the head, gradually enlarged in her pupils. It was as if he wanted to take over her body. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes fluttered furiously as her body moved even more vigorously. Her fingertips held the glower flame fan and the rolling profound rays swiftly chopped downwards. Rumble. Suddenly, the ground caved in. Yiqing Luo only felt an earthquake. There seemed to be something distorting the entire space. Immediately following that, Yiqing Luo was in the distorted space and her vision turned blurry as it sunk into darkness. After what seemed like several breaths of time, Yiqing Luo abruptly opened her eyes. The feeling of being bound disappeared just like that. At this moment, she was standing on a battlefield littered with corpses. The thick stench of blood and the surrounding Xian ripples were like monstrous waves, constantly surging. Yiqing Luo glanced around. He looked at his hands and feet again. Did this change the scene again? Was it just an illusion that the barbaric Bloodbone King had discovered her existence? Yiqing Luo's complexion turned slightly pale. Feng Gu, are we really going to end up like this? A voice came from not far away. It was the barbaric Bloodbone King. When Yiqing Luo heard his voice, she recalled the feeling of being entangled to her ankles by the blood bone in the cave earlier. She shuddered, listening to the direction of the voice. The distance between her and the barbaric Bloodbone King wasn't too far. Cautiously, she moved her feet towards the direction of the sound. Update complete. Moi. End of this chapter, the fastest update speed, hurry up and read it. Download address, mobile phone reading. Chapter 4492. Indeed, after a few steps. Just at the edge of the cliff, she saw two figures suspended in mid-air. Feng Gu and Bloodbone Barbaric King. The surrounding profound waves surged like a surging huge wave. The sky was covered by an inky black profound energy, causing the surrounding atmosphere to become extremely oppressive. The atmosphere between the two was no longer as gentle as the first time Yiqing Luo saw it. But it was encircled by a layer of thick, austere aura. When the two of them looked at each other, there was an eerie chill. Ah Gu, you're my most important friend. The lady's voice was filled with pain, her fingers which were holding onto the long sword turned white. Why? Why do we have to come to such a stage? I'm out on something today. I'll come back to write the script. I'll take a day off first, adding on to the 3 chapters 10 previously and the 3 chapters 10 today, plus the 1 chapter 10, I owe a total of 8 chapters. I'll make up for it in 2 days' time, moi. They were above thousands of people. What kind of woman couldn't he get? Why should he pity this broken shoe? The scene was in chaos. Huangfu Zhangdong looked at the distance between him and Bai Mei, as he stared furiously at Huangfu Sheng. Immediately after, he called for the Huangfu family's forces, as they speedily pounced towards Bai Mei's direction. That impatient action made Huangfu Sheng's lips twitch in disdain. Ah Sheng. Gu Zixi stretched out her arms, as she hugged his waist, as she raised her head, as she gazed deeply at Huangfu Sheng's face. Her lips curled upwards, as her smile was warm and gentle. I'll always be here. Huangfu Sheng's cold and stiff expression slowly softened. He gently caressed Gu Zixi hair, as their eyes met. The cold air which was emitting from his body also gradually stopped. This scene fell into the eyes of the crowd not far away. Yiqing Luo's lips curled, as she looked behind her with a smile which didn't look like a smile. Your little cousin has a good life, to meet a good lady, you don't need to worry. Who's worried about him? Xiao Jin snorted coldly. Yiqing Luo's gaze slid downwards, as she looked at Yan Xiao Yi who was standing beside Xiao Jin. Her gaze fell onto their interlocked fingers. Her lips curled into a gorgeous smile. You're also lucky, to meet a good lady. They were talking and laughing. His gaze fell on their intertwined fingers. The corners of her lips curled up into a gorgeous smile. "You're lucky to have met a good girl." They were talking and laughing. Yiqing Luo suddenly felt that the man beside her had some changes in his emotions. She glanced sideways at Dmo Xian. "What's wrong?" The man's expression was cold, and there was a hint of anger in his eyes. The girl turned to look at him. The look in his eyes had become gentle and unique to her. "What's the matter?" Yiqing Luo raised her hand and touched his face as she repeated that sentence. Dmo Xian lifted his hand. His purple robe fluttered like flowing clouds, and a wisp of white shadow could be vaguely seen swaying. Before Yiqing Luo had the chance to ask, Dmo Xian's expression revealed some unkind intentions. Pursing his thin lips, he bent down slowly and kissed her lips. Then, he headed in the direction of the chaotic crowd. That was the direction of Bai Mei from the Palace of Darkness. There weren't many people from the Palace of Darkness who came this time round. The surrounding large powerhouses had long gone crazy over the so-called secret of the Divine Emperor's tomb. How could the Palace of Darkness's disciples stop them? It could be said that Bai Mei had been abused so badly that it was unbearable to watch. She was almost on her last breath. And on her body, there was nothing related to the Divine Emperor's tomb. Chapter 4493. Feng Gu, since you've already chosen to capture me, then, we're already enemies. The blood-bone barbarian monarch smiled evilly. He raised his hand and caressed his lips, as if he wanted to continue. Feng Gu gripped her long sword tightly. Her pair of enchanting eyes overflowed with coldness. But because of the person in front of her, she forcibly suppressed the anger in her heart. "As long as you give me a reasonable explanation, I will take responsibility for this matter." Feng Ji's voice was almost squeezed out from between her teeth. This was obviously her last concession. The blood-bone barbarian monarch's evil smile stiffened. His pitch-black eyes were filled with complicated emotions. Fleeting. He laughed. His laughter was loud, but it seemed to be concealing some kind of emotion in his heart. "Take responsibility for me? Tell me, you were the one who killed those people? Or are you going to become the mastermind behind me?" The blood-bone barbarian monarch laughed in a low voice. His laughter was full of mockery. "Don't joke around. Who are you and who am I? Are you going to destroy your own future for me?" He laughed and shook his head mockingly. "No, impossible. The person you love is not me. You still have your child. How are you going to take responsibility for me?" Under the man's mocking tone, the woman was actually unable to refute his words. She clenched her fists. "You really don't want to tell me the real reason?" "How can I tell you without a reason?" The blood-bone barbarian monarch snorted. "Or do you want me to lie to you?" The woman's delicate body suddenly tensed up. "You mean, the rumors outside are all true? Is it really because you want to obtain eternal life and increase your own strength that you've cultivated a forbidden art, used divine bodies as nourishment, and refined the flesh and blood of other profound practitioners from the god realm into your own power?" Every word she said. Her tone became tenser. In the end, her entire mood was tense. The blood-bone barbarian monarch smiled. His expression was very indifferent. "It's true. Ah Gu." The woman screamed hysterically, tears seeping out from the corners of her eyes. "You promised me that when I succeeded the throne, I would make you the barbaric blood-bone king, and that you would accompany me to protect everything?" She was really hurt. Moreover, he was thoroughly injured. She had never doubted Ah Gu. Even if everyone was condemning Ah Gu. But she firmly believed that everything Ah Gu had done, he definitely had his own difficulties. However, Ah Gu had personally shattered all of her beliefs. This was her brother, who was as close as a brother to her. He was someone she had given her true feelings to and treated as her own brother. But he admitted all of this with his own mouth. The barbaric Blood-Bone King's eyes changed when he saw her tears. But Feng Gu, right now, I am also invincible, barbaric Blood-Bone King. The barbaric Blood-Bone King chuckled. However, the woman's appearance in the past appeared before his eyes. She smiled brightly and looked at him. From now on, your title will be Barbaric Blood-Bone King. Isn't it awesome? The scene of the past still seemed like it was yesterday. The barbaric Blood-Bone King closed his eyes tightly, took a deep breath, and calmed his emotions. Then, he maintained his evil smile, and said word by word, if you want to enforce justice on behalf of the heavens, I'm afraid, you can't do it now. His gaze fell on the long sword in her hand. The corners of his mouth rose slightly, and there was a bit of coldness in his eyes. Chapter 4494. The chapter name is wrong, but the content is correct. The past memory, wait till the day when you can really lay your hands on me, then come and find me. Saying that, he turned around. The densely packed blood and bones quickly gathered and wrapped him up in layers. The crisp sound of bones echoed throughout the entire space. Following that, the figure of the barbaric Blood-Bone King disappeared among the blood bones. The sky full of blood bones also merged into the air. The lady stood on the spot, staring blankly at the direction where the barbaric Blood-Bone King disappeared. Her body seemed to have lost all support as it suddenly fell to the ground. The sharp crystal-long sword also fell to the ground. She shut her eyes tightly, the expression on her face was an uncontrollable restlessness. Why did it become like this? Ah Gu, why did he do that? I really don't want to get into this situation with him. The lady's murmur was very soft. But Yiqing Luo, who was lying on the cliff, heard it clearly. Looking at the scene in front of her, Yiqing Luo roughly understood this memory. It was no wonder that the people in the Gu residence were not allowed to mention the words, Barbaric Blood-Bone King. It turned out that Barbaric Blood-Bone King was the title given to him by this lady named Feng Gu. In the end, the two of them became enemies. And because of this, Barbaric Blood-Bone King did not want to mention these words again. She had to admit, there was actually a so-called friendship between men and women. At least for Feng Gu. She indeed sincerely treated the barbaric Blood-Bone King as her own friend and even a relative. Otherwise, she would not be in so much pain because of the barbaric Blood-Bone King's actions. In the previous memory, Yiqing Luo remembered that the barbaric Blood-Bone King absorbed the nourishment from the god's body. It seemed to be for Feng Gu. What the f***ck? Could it be a sadomasochistic relationship? He did it for her. She was totally unaware and had all sorts of misunderstandings. Then both of them went their separate ways. So sadistic. Yiqing Luo broke out in cold sweat for the both of them. He wondered if Feng Gu would regret her decision to choose the man she loved deeply after she found out about this. Yiqing Luo was thinking. Suddenly a figure appeared from not too far away. That person was tall and muscular. Not knowing if it was because they were too far apart, the light from this angle pierced her eyes. Yiqing Luo couldn't see that person's face clearly. The man approached Feng Gu. Yiqing Luo couldn't even see that person's face clearly. Alright, don't be sad. It was a man's voice. It was gentle and extremely pleasant to listen to. You are so sad. My heart aches. Huang, when the woman heard the man's voice, she threw herself into his arms. Yiqing Luo was puzzled. She could clearly see the woman's face. But he couldn't see the man's face clearly. However, judging from the woman's actions and tone, it was obvious that she wasn't lying. That man should be the person she had chosen to love deeply. This is his own choice. He can't blame anyone else. The man comforted her gently. Don't let your imagination run wild. You're still pregnant. Feng Gu wrapped her arms around his waist tightly, as if she had found a safe place to rest. She closed her eyes in peace. To me, he's like an older brother. I don't want him to go astray because of me. Otherwise, I'll feel guilty for the rest of my life. I know. The man lowered his head and kissed her hair. He will understand your painstaking efforts. As long as he doesn't use the forbidden technique, the sovereign of God Emperor will not do anything to him. Huang. Feng Gu suddenly raised her head and looked at the man. Actually the sovereign of God Emperor, following Feng Ge's gaze upwards. Yiqing Luo was also trying her best to see the man's face clearly. Chapter 4495. The chapter name is wrong, but the content is correct. Past memory at this moment. That familiar earth quaking and mountain shaking, as well as the distortion of space, struck her once again. Yiqing Luo. Motherf asterisk Ker. What a coincidence. Every critical moment, it would shift to the next space. Was it intentional? Was it because he didn't want her to discover the most important part of this memory? It was simply poisonous. No matter how Yiqing Luo ridiculed in her heart. This distorted space, once again made her lose her gravity, causing her to blink out. When she opened her eyes again. As expected, the scene had shifted again. Yiqing Luo expressed that she was used to it and remained calm. She looked around in a daze. Now, she was in an extremely secluded mountain peak. In front of her was a stretch of luxuriant foliage, thick and extremely horrifying plants. And not far ahead, there was a huge cave. Yiqing Luo walked over. But she didn't go near. Because, the surroundings of the cave, were rippling with dense profound waves. One circle after another, like ripples spreading out. If she went near, she would suffer from this wave of energy attack. Yiqing Luo took a look and casually found a big tree. She chose a place that could withstand her weight, and could easily conceal her figure. She had already figured out the routine. Anyway, to the memory of this space. Even if she didn't move. What was supposed to happen, would definitely happen. All she had to do was wait here. As expected. About 2 hours later. A rustling sound was heard from the dense forest. Yiqing Luo shifted her body and looked towards the direction of the sound. She saw a lady dressed in a fiery red robe, rushing towards the cave. The profound waves agitated her red dress, and the veil on her face, was also blown lightly. His aura was extremely cold and solemn. As though it was going to destroy the heaven and earth. When the lady rushed to the cave, she raised the long sword in her hand, and waved it towards the cave. The profound waves surged, shaking the space. Some of the surrounding plants, were uprooted by the profound waves. The place where Yiqing Luo was hiding, was almost overturned. But at this timely moment, Kacha, a bloody bone slid out of the cave. Then, countless bloody bones crawled out of the cave. When he realized that it was a woman, he felt a chill run down his spine. The blood bone shrank back abruptly. After a while, the blood-bone barbarian king walked out of the cave. Yiqing Luo, who was in the dark, it seemed like the barbaric blood-bone king knew that his current form was extremely ugly. He didn't want to meet Feng Gu in an ugly appearance. Yiqing Luo's vision swept past Feng Gu. He did not know what the timeline of these memories was like. Feng Ge's stomach had already flattened. This meant that the child in her stomach had already been born. Moreover, she had finished her confinement. How long had it been since the 3 memory segments had happened? Yiqing Luo was really dumbfounded looking at this. Feng Gu, the blood-bone barbaric king, looked at the woman's face greedily, his eyes filled with longing. Why are you here? How long do you want to hide? The woman opened her mouth, her voice was extremely cold. The blood-bone barbaric king lowered his eyes slightly, as he sighed softly, I have no choice, you guys are chasing too closely, if I don't hide, then I can only absorb all of them to become my nourishment. If I do this, you will not be happy. The woman raised the long sword in her hand, as she gave a cold laugh, yes, I'm very unhappy, so I'm here on behalf of heaven. Chapter 4496. The blood-bone barbarian king was startled and looked at him in a daze. Suddenly, he grinned and said, Is Feng-gu ready to kill me? The woman's eyes were cold. She did not respond. With a leap, he swept away the boundless profound light and swung his sword. She attacked without holding back. The killing intent in the profound light was not fake. The barbaric blood-bone king was stunned by her murderous aura. His smiling face finally couldn't help but freeze. He frowned slightly, and a puzzled expression floated in his eyes. Perhaps it was because he was stunned that he didn't dodge. Or was it because he didn't believe that Feng-gu would kill him? The barbaric blood-bone king did not dodge. He did not retaliate either. The long sword pierced straight through the blood-bone barbarian king's body. From one end of his shoulder to the other end of his body. The sharp pain made the barbaric blood-bone king's face turn deathly pale. He looked at Feng-gu in disbelief. His eyes were filled with panic and helplessness. Do you really think I can't bear to kill you? The woman's cold words were filled with coldness. Do you know that I've wanted to kill you since the moment Ah Huang appeared in my life? The blood-bone barbarian king was startled. The icy chill made him unable to think properly. The woman laughed mockingly. If Ah Huang hadn't told me that you were still useful, I would have killed you long ago. Don't you know that your self-righteous feelings for me not only annoys me, but also disgusts me? The last 3 words. The woman deliberately looked at the barbaric blood-bone king's eyes and said word by word. Those 3 words. It was like a sudden clap of thunder that exploded in the barbaric blood-bone king's mind. The piercing pain in his shoulder. It was not even half as big as his heart. Looking at the astonished and incredulous expression on the man's face. The mocking look on the woman's face became even more pronounced. As if she was ridiculing the man's ignorance, she sneered, Ah Gu, everyone says that you're a smart person, but in my eyes, you're as stupid as a pig. The woman laughed. Suddenly, she moved her fingers. He pulled the sword out of the barbaric blood-bone king's shoulder. Blood splattered everywhere. The barbaric blood-bone king's body was also sent flying by the force of the sword. His body fell heavily to the ground. He groaned in pain. The sharp pain in his shoulder and the feeling of blood loss caused his mind to finally clear up. The woman raised her sword again and swung it at the barbaric blood-bone king. This time, the barbaric blood-bone king reacted. He quickly rolled on the ground and dodged the woman's attack. His face was gloomy, the bone-chilling coldness was eroding his body and mind. Even though he saw the woman's extremely cold face with his own eyes. He still could not believe it. Feng-gu, what are you talking about? The woman raised her voice and laughed loudly. Then, she suddenly flew over. The sword in his hand had no intention of holding back at all. The piercingly cold sword wave swept up a dense killing intent. The barbaric blood-bone king naturally felt the murderous aura from the woman. He dodged awkwardly. However, one of them was ruthless and determined to kill him. One of them was filled with shock, yet he was unwilling to retaliate. There was no suspense at all in this war. In just a short while, the blood-bone barbarian king was once again struck by the sword, and was pressed against the steep rock wall by the woman. The woman forcefully stepped on him to the ground. Pointing the sword at the barbaric blood-bone king, she said, "You're useless, now, you can die." Feng-gu. There was no fear of death in the barbaric blood-bone king's eyes, but despair and pain towards the woman's coldness. Hurry up and read the latest update. Download URL. Chapter 4497. I'll tell you the truth. Actually, from the very beginning, I knew everything you did for me. Do you think that Huang approached me because of my identity? But, Gu, I love him. If he really wants my life, I'm willing to give it to him. The pupils of the barbaric blood-bone king contracted. The woman's words pierced his heart deeply. The woman looked at his pale face and smiled even more happily. Do you really think that I don't know that it's because of me, that you're bearing the infamy of the world? No, actually I know everything. I know everything. Because of my identity, the child in my womb is born with an imperial mandate. It will inherit everything I have, and even my identity. So, someone is secretly trying to take my life and my child's life while I'm pregnant and my power is unstable. In order to protect me, to protect my child, you cultivated a forbidden technique. Yes, everything the blood-bone barbarian king had done was for Feng Gu. For the child in Feng Ji's belly. Even though he knew that Feng Gu didn't love him and that the child in Feng Ji's belly was another man's child. But he still disregarded everything, even sacrificing himself, just to protect Feng Gu. Cultivating a forbidden technique. Using other divine bodies as nourishment. He had become a street rat and everyone wanted to beat him up. Furthermore, even she had to come forward to suppress him. He had to bear her misunderstanding, her confusion, and her disappointment. But, she knew everything that had happened. She knew everything. But he accepted it as a matter of course. He even pretended not to know anything. Looking at him, he was like a clown, sacrificing everything for her. I'm very grateful to you, really. The woman smiled at him. However, his eyes were filled with coldness. Now that my child has been born, your final role now is to fulfill my reputation and die by my hand. She leaned down slightly. The foot that was stepping on the barbaric blood-bone king's chest increased in strength. Don't you love me very much? Now, everyone in the world is questioning whether the Divine Emperor's faction is unable to kill you because of our relationship. I protected you. If I kill you now, I'll definitely be able to clear my name, for me, so, die. The barbaric blood-bone king's face darkened. He could tell that the woman's words came from the bottom of her heart. He curled his lips into a sneer, and his eyes were filled with surging waves. Just as the woman's sword was about to descend, he made a move. He grabbed the woman's ankle. Gotcha. The woman's bare leg was broken. The woman cried out in pain. The barbaric blood-bone king seized the opportunity to flip over and roll down the cliff on the other side of the cave. The woman limped as she chased after him. He looked down at the bottomless abyss. The gravel rolled around his feet, but he couldn't even hear the sound of the gravel hitting the ground. The woman stared at the bottom of the cliff for a long time. She sheathed her sword and snorted coldly. Heh. You sure know how to choose. You know that death won't be that painful. After saying that, the woman left the scene. Until the woman's figure and aura completely disappeared. Yiqing Luo then emerged from the darkness. She frowned as she stared at the direction where the woman left for a long time, and couldn't help but frown. Why did she feel that something was wrong? Chapter 4498. That woman called Feng Gu, it shouldn't be like this. Even though she had only met Feng Gu twice. She could also conclude that Feng Gu was definitely not such a person. The Feng Gu that he had seen in the previous memory. She was 100% sure. Feng Gu genuinely regarded the barbaric blood-bone king as his own brother, or even his family. The look in her eyes could not be faked. But this memory, Feng Ji's image had completely collapsed. She looked at the barbaric blood-bone king with a cold and emotionless gaze. It was as if all the feelings in the past were fake. There was a voice in Yiqing Luo's heart that kept telling her. Feng Gu was definitely not such a person. All of this must be a misunderstanding. Yi Qing Luo pursed her lips and retracted her vision. She summoned Chi-Chi and hopped onto its back. He asked Chi-Chi to jump off the cliff with her to look for the blood-bone barbaric king. The cliff was extremely high, and falling down would basically result in one's body being smashed to pieces. There probably wouldn't even be any scraps of flesh left. However, the blood-bone barbarian king was definitely not dead. If she had died, she would not have met the blood-bone barbarian king and would not have been brought to the heaven realm by him. The blood-bone barbarian king must have activated the male protagonist's halo when he fell. Riding on Chi-Chi, he searched all over the place. Another wave came. The earth quaked, the mountains shook, and space distorted. Yi Qing Luo, it was time to switch spaces and switch memories again. By the time the darkness in front of her dispersed, Yi Qing Luo regained her clarity. Everything in front of him, nothing had changed. It was still below the cliff. She was still on Chi-Chi's back. Yi Qing Luo? What was going on? What happened just now? Wasn't the memory going to change? Why was there still no change? Is the program faulty? Yi Qing Luo had a dazed look on her face as she rode on Chi-Chi and continued to look around the cliff to see if there were any caves halfway up the mountain or places within the tree branches. After searching for at least 2 hours, Yi Qing Luo still hadn't found any traces of the blood-bone barbaric king. Without a goal, there was no way to find it. After searching for such a long time, it was time for Chi-Chi to rest. Yi Qing Luo found a place to land and kept Chi-Chi back into the pet space. Suddenly, he heard the sound of someone stepping on a withered branch. Yi Qing Luo's eyes shone brightly as she speedily dodged to one side, staring intently at the direction where the sound came from. Based on experience. As long as someone appeared, they would definitely be able to bring her back to the main character of this memory. As expected. Very quickly, a blazing figure appeared in front of Yi Qing Luo. It was Feng Gu. Yi Qing Luo was slightly stunned. Why was she here? Could it be, he also felt that the barbaric blood king wasn't dead, so he purposely ran down the cliff to stab it a few more times? No, that's not right. The look in the woman's eyes was different from before. The woman's footsteps were very hurried, and there was even a hint of panic. He quickly scanned his surroundings. The worry and nervousness in his eyes could not be concealed. The woman stopped at the place where Yi Qing Luo was standing earlier, her puzzled gaze surveyed the surroundings. Just now, I was obviously here and heard the commotion. I thought it was Ah Gu, why is there no one here? The woman paused, then raised her voice and called out, Ah Gu, where are you? Ah Gu. But, the quiet surroundings didn't give her any response at all. The woman sighed softly, hope Ah Gu is fine. Chapter 4499. Yi Qing Luo, who was hiding in the dark, her body tensed up, prepared to execute her blink movement to escape. After all, she had already experienced Feng Ji's strength. With Feng Ji's strength, it was actually very easy for her to sense her presence. However, the woman clearly did not sense her presence. On this point, Yi Qing Luo also felt a little strange. There were a few times when she peeped at him from the side. Neither the blood-bone barbarian king nor Feng Gu noticed her presence. Was it because her hidden skills were getting better and better? Looking at Feng Gu, who had already walked far away, Yi Qing Luo decisively chose to follow behind Feng Gu. It was simply a routine. As long as he followed Feng Gu, he would definitely be able to find the blood-bone barbarian king. As expected, after following Feng Gu for less than an hour, Feng Gu found the blood-bone barbarian king in a cave on the mountainside. Yi Qing Luo, damn it, she could say that she had gone through no less than 20 caves. Why didn't they find this cave? He followed Feng Gu into the cave. Yi Qing Luo saw from afar that the blood-bone barbaric king was covered in blood lying on the ground, and had already fallen into a deep coma. His body was drenched in blood. Yiqing Luo felt apprehensive. He was injured to this extent, but he was still alive. His life was really tough. When Feng Gu saw the blood-bone barbarian king, his face immediately turned pale. She quickly walked to the blood-bone barbarian king's side and whispered its name. But the barbaric blood-bone king did not react at all. His body was also extremely cold. If it wasn't for the faint breathing sounds coming from his chest, he would have been dead. They would probably think that he was dead. Feng Gu forcibly fed the blood-bone barbarian king a lot of elixirs from his interspatial ring. She also infused her dark force into his body. After tossing and turning for a long time, the blood-bone barbaric king did not have the slightest reaction. Feng Ji's voice was hoarse and choked as he called out the barbaric blood-bone king's name. She clenched her fists tightly, her eyes filled with unswerving determination. "Ah Gu, I won't let you die, I absolutely won't let you die," she raised her hand. A stream of flame-like light flashed across his fingertips. Bit by bit, she sweeps the wrist, the fingers. Then, he stroked his neck, his ears. Immediately after, rays of light shot out. Yiqing Luo, who was hiding at the entrance of the cave, was pierced by this ray. Then, she saw the top of Feng Ji's head. 5 flaming red objects were floating in the air. A ring. It was a bracelet that looked like a line of blood. It was a bright necklace. A pair of ruby earrings. It was a transparent jade pendant with flickering flames. Following the release of the woman's profound energy, the blazing light emitted by the 5 ornaments slowly formed a line. Seeing this scene, Yiqing Luo almost jumped out of the cave entrance. Her eyes widened in shock. He looked at Feng Gu in disbelief. She would never mistake those 5 ornaments. Azure Water Divine Artifact, Azure Water 5-piece set. The ring and the bracelet were exactly the same as the one she was wearing. Why was the Azure Water 5-piece set on Feng Gu? She can still use these 5 divine artifacts? And it was obvious that Feng Ji's control over the god weapon was much more proficient than hers. She remembered, the vast water divine artifact was a divine artifact forged by the divine emperor. Could it be? The woman in front of her, named Feng Gu, was actually the divine emperor? This thought made Yiqing Luo totally stunned. Right from the start, she had been suspicious of Feng Ji's identity. But the memories changed too quickly, so she didn't go to investigate further. Download address, phone reading. Chapter 4500. Now, when he strung all these things together, she was absolutely sure that Feng Gu was the emperor of divine emperors. Yiqing Luo stared blankly at the 5 vast water divine armaments. He stared blankly at the lady who was controlling the divine weapon with her eyes closed and injecting its power into the brute blood-bone king's body. His heart suddenly beat faster. The emperor of divine emperors, it was possible that they were her relatives. From the moment he saw the murals, she knew that there was a connection between her and the emperor of the divine emperor. He was also guessing. What was the relationship between him and the divine emperor? When he saw the emperor of the divine emperor himself, she had an intuition. She was definitely related to the emperor of the divine emperor. This kind of feeling made her heart beat faster and her eyes sour. They were all deeply confirming one thing. The emperor of the divine emperor was her family. No wonder, ever since she first met Feng Gu, she had felt an indescribable sense of familiarity from Feng Gu. In the previous memory, everything that Feng Gu had done to the blood-bone barbarian king, she had always felt that it was strange. He couldn't believe that Feng Gu was such a person. It was an intuition that came from the depths of his soul. Yiqing Luo pursed her lower lip slightly as her eyes were fixated on Feng Ji's every move without blinking. Want to unveil her veil. She wanted to see what this family member, who had a deep connection with her, looked like. Under Feng Ji's control, the power of the divine weapon slowly seeped into the blood-bone barbarian king's body. Coupled with the assistance of elixirs, the external injuries of the blood-bone barbaric king were slowly recovering. In the next few days, Feng Gu had been taking care of the blood-bone barbarian king in the cave. Every day, he persisted in using the power of the divine weapon to repair the barbaric blood-bone king. And during this period of time, this memory did not jump to the next one. How long had Feng Gu been taking care of him? Yiqing Luo squatted at the entrance of the cave for a long time. Feng Gu didn't discover Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo didn't appear to disturb Feng Gu. It wasn't that she didn't want to appear. Instead, in this memory, she was a non-existent person. If she appeared, this memory would be disrupted. She might not be able to find the true memories of the barbaric blood-bone king. This part, he had the memories of the divine emperor. She wanted to know the love and hate entanglement between the divine emperor and the blood-bone barbarian king. He wanted to know why the emperor of the divine emperor had passed away. He wanted to know just what exactly had happened within this. A few days passed. The injuries of the blood-bone barbarian king had long since healed. However, he never woke up. His handsome face was like that of a sleeping demon. Even though he was in a deep sleep, he still exuded boundless coldness. Feng Gu did not know the reason, but he thought of many ways. But it was useless. Yiqing Luo could roughly guess why the barbaric blood-bone king hadn't woken up. He was afraid that he had locked himself in his own world, unable to walk out of that darkness. Because, he could not accept the fact that Feng Gu would kill him. He could not accept Feng Ji's cruelty to him. For the blood-bone barbarian king. If Feng Gu had made her attitude clear from the beginning and asked the barbaric blood-bone king to sacrifice for her, she would not have believed it. The barbaric blood-bone king will not hesitate to satisfy all of her requests. However, from the blood-bone barbarian king's point of view, Feng Gu was using him. Take advantage of his love. To achieve her goal. The barbaric blood-bone king was unwilling to wake up, unwilling to face this fact. This was a psychological problem. He could only let the barbaric blood-bone king walk out from the darkness himself. No one could help him. There's more at the back. I'm writing. Baby will read it tomorrow morning. End of this chapter. Chapter 45:01. On the morning of the fifth day, Feng Gu kept the divine weapon and wore it again. Her gaze fell helplessly on blood-bone barbaric king as she muttered softly, "When are you going to wake up? If you don't wake up, I'm leaving." As she said that, she lifted her leg and gave blood-bone barbaric king a light kick. "I've been out looking for you for several days. Huang must be searching for my whereabouts. You're now a sinner in the god realm. I can't let Huang find you, bastard. Your injuries have obviously healed, but you still pretend to be asleep." The lady's soft voice sounded like a complaint. But Yiqing Luo could tell. That was mixed with deep concern and helplessness. That was only when facing a real old friend, a brother, she would have this tone and attitude. Feng Gu really valued blood-bone barbaric king as a brother, a relative. Just as the lady was muttering beside blood-bone barbaric king, nagging about their past memories, the lady suddenly stopped in her tracks. Her entire body tensed up. The expression on her face also turned solemn and grave. A pair of enchanting eyes stared straight at the entrance of the cave. "Oh no! Those people have found their way here." Feng Gu stood up abruptly. The blazing red dress was like a burning fire. Her aura was no longer as gentle as a little girl's, but rather, it was cold and sharp. She turned back and took a look at blood-bone barbaric king who was lying on the ground. Her slender brows were tightly knitted into a bundle. "I can't let them discover your existence. Gu, wait for me, I'll go lure those people away." After Feng Gu finished her words, she quickly left the cave. Yiqing Luo shrank on the other side, and from afar she could see a huge wave of profound energy surging in the entire dense forest. Was it the God Emperor's men? They were here to look for Feng Gu. Or did they know that Bloodbone Barbaric King wasn't dead and wanted to hunt him down? Feng Ge's figure speedily headed towards the direction of the profound energy. But a moment later, the Xian wave on the other side slowly stopped. After that, the dense forest resumed its original peace. It looked like Feng Ge's appearance should have dissuaded those cultivators. Yiqing Luo retracted her gaze and looked towards the cave again. This look. She nearly fell from her hiding place. Because it was unknown when the barbaric Bloodbone King had woken up. He sat up straight, one hand on the back of his head, a puzzled expression on his handsome face. Yiqing Luo, she no longer wanted to complain about the direction of this memory. It was extremely melodramatic. Feng Gu left. The barbaric Bloodbone King woke up. Wasn't this clearly to escalate the misunderstanding between the two of them? Yiqing Luo could guess the following plot even with her toes. The barbaric Bloodbone King thought that it was Feng Gu who had injured him. However, he didn't know that he had been saved by Feng Gu. Speaking from experience. Feng Gu had just left, so it was unlikely that he would return. If he came back, wouldn't the misunderstanding between the two be resolved? That Feng Gu from the previous plot. His ice-cold eyes and ruthless methods filled with killing intent, didn't seem fake. But now, it was Feng Gu who had saved the Bloodbone Barbarian King, and his attitude was completely different from before. This was definitely a misunderstanding. However, based on the conversation between Xian and Yiqing Luo when she first met the barbaric Bloodbone King, this misunderstanding probably hadn't been resolved even after the sovereign of God Emperor had passed away. Otherwise, when the barbaric Bloodbone King heard the sovereign of God Emperor's name, he would reveal such a disgusted and complicated expression. Chapter 4502. Moreover, the Bloodbone Barbarian King kept calling the Emperor of God Emperors, slut. In fact, he even built the Linglong Palace in an attempt to kill his way back to the God world, however, from the memories of the barbaric Bloodbone King. Yiqing Luo didn't feel that the barbaric Bloodbone King really hated Feng Gu. He was only using this method to convince himself to give up on Feng Gu. The reason he built the Nimble Palace was because he wanted to fight his way back to the God world, but in reality, all he wanted was an explanation from the beginning. Otherwise, he wouldn't have revealed such an expression after learning that the Divine Emperor had passed away. In the end, it even disappeared. Yiqing Luo finally understood now. Why was Dmo Xian so certain that the barbaric Bloodbone King would not harm her? Because of her relationship with the Divine Emperor. No matter what, the barbaric Bloodbone King would not do anything to her. It was no wonder, after the Bloodbone Barbarian King abducted her to the Heaven Realm. He gave her a supreme status, and even handed over everything in the Gu residence to her. However, he did not meet her. Because he didn't know what kind of attitude he should use to face her. She was related to the Emperor of the Divine Emperor. From the looks of it now, she began to sympathize with the barbaric Bloodbone King. The unrequited love is the most hurtful. However, he couldn't give up so easily. It was unknown whether the Bloodbone Barbaric King had awoken because it had subconsciously heard Feng Ge's words, "If you don't wake up, I'll leave," or, it had already thought things through. In short, the barbaric Bloodbone King sat on the spot for a while before he stood up and walked out of the cave with a gloomy expression. In a dense forest, the thick, withered leaves covered all traces of people. The barbaric Bloodbone King swept his gaze around. He didn't discover anyone else. He also didn't smell the aura of the person he wanted to see in the air. He closed his eyes slightly. He was obviously disappointed. Sure enough, he was deeply in love with the Divine Emperor, even until now. The Bloodbone Barbarian King was still hoping to see Feng Gu. He wanted to hear her explanation. Even if it was a made-up explanation. As long as she said it, he would believe it. The barbaric Blood-Bone King stood in the dense forest for a long time. Standing there, Yiqing Luo felt the earth shaking and the space in front of her started to distort. It was time to switch memory spaces again. This time, Yiqing Luo automatically closed her eyes. The feeling of that darkness penetrating his eyes was very uncomfortable. When the feeling of the earth shaking and mountains shaking disappeared, Yiqing Luo then slowly opened her eyes. He adjusted himself to the brightness of the light. He scanned his surroundings. She was now in a huge mansion. It was resplendent and luxurious. She looked very familiar. This was the bone residence that she lived in when she was in the heaven realm. Yiqing Luo was trying to figure out what time this memory was from. In an instant, he had gone from the god realm to the heavenly realm. However, at this moment, the Gu residence was extremely gloomy. It was such a huge venue. Not even a shadow of a person could be seen. It was empty, silent, and the atmosphere was a little strange. Yiqing Luo followed her memory and found the Blood-Bone Barbaric King's courtyard. He had yet to get close. Her hand was suddenly grabbed by a force. His entire person was suddenly pulled into the darkness. Yiqing Luo was on high alert as she turned her hand to attack the person behind her. However, when he caught a glimpse of a black figure out of the corner of his eye, he stopped. She frowned and looked behind her. What came into view was the palace lord of the secluded palace who was shrouded in a black robe. In the darkness, he looked even more sinister. Chapter 4503. Yiqing Luo's eyes sunk. It's you. The palace lord's hand was still clasping her arm, his eyes under the black robe were slightly dark. Didn't I say not to follow? Yiqing Luo raised her brows. You say no and I won't follow? The current owner of the bone residence seems to be me. You barged into my territory. The palace lord's emotions fluctuated, as though there were some ups and downs. After some time, he sighed helplessly. You shouldn't have come in. Blood-Bone Barbaric King's memory, is your motive? Yiqing Luo flung his hand away, as her lips curled into a cold arc. How is it, have you seen what you wanted to see? The palace lord wanted to say something, but when the words reached the tip of his tongue, he swallowed it back. In the end, he only spat out 3 words, not yet. Yiqing Luo scoffed lightly, as her long and narrow eyes didn't conceal her ridicule. Her gaze swept past the Blood-Bone Barbaric King's courtyard. The ridicule in her eyes deepened. If I ask you, what is the palace lord of darkness trying to get from the Blood-Bone Barbaric King, will you answer? The palace lord of darkness raised his head slightly. The black robe covered his face, and his current emotions couldn't be seen. His voice was slightly hoarse. What did you see? He didn't answer, but asked back. Yiqing Luo didn't hide, as she was very straightforward. Blood-Bone Barbaric King's memory. She paused, as her long and narrow eyes curved. Don't tell me. You didn't see it? If he had seen earlier, those memories between the Blood-Bone Barbaric King and the Sovereign of Gods. At this moment, he definitely wouldn't ask like this. For a long time, there was no response from the other party. This was also indirectly confirmed. The other party was indeed. She didn't see anything. Yiqing Luo suddenly laughed. Looks like, Palace Lord's luck isn't too good. You finally got by Mei as a sacrifice, to open the Blood-Bone Barbaric King's sealed memory entrance. But in the end, you didn't get anything. What did you see? He asked again, as his voice became much heavier. Yiqing Luo shrugged. I naturally saw something that you didn't, of course. I can't tell you. Yiqing Luo. He suddenly spoke in a serious tone. Tell me now, what exactly did you see? If you tell me now, perhaps I can still guarantee your safety for the time being. But, after this, I can't predict how Master will treat you. Yiqing Luo's eyes curved into a smile. You want to know? Why don't you tell me what you palace's goal is? What does you palace want? He fell silent once more. Yiqing Luo's brows curved slightly as her lips curled up, revealing a hint of slyness and ridicule. Since you're not willing to answer, then let's forget about this deal. After Yiqing Luo finished her words, she didn't look at the palace lord of Seclusion Palace. The man behind him had no intention of asking any further questions. The atmosphere turned silent once again. There was an awkward atmosphere in the air. After a while, the palace lord of Ethereal Palace then retracted his thoughts as he frowned slightly and opened his mouth. Yiqing Luo, even if you don't say it now, when master makes a move on you. Shoo, be careful. Suddenly, a cautious voice was heard from not too far away. She saw a 30 to 40-year-old middle-aged man, leading 2 male servants, carefully walking towards Bloodbone Barbaric King's courtyard. Chapter 4504. The Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace immediately kept quiet. Both of them quietened down as they looked at the person in front of them vigilantly. The middle-aged man and the manservant didn't notice the two people in the dark as they whispered to each other as they walked. Your daily task is to clean up Bone Lord's courtyard and send the 3 meals to his door, do you understand? The 2 servants nodded obediently, but there was still a look of fear on their faces. Don't be afraid. The middle-aged man comforted them, as long as you don't make any noise when you work and disturb Bone Lord, you will be safe and sound. Although they said that, their faces were still very pale. You should feel lucky to work in Bone Lord's courtyard. As long as you pay attention and don't disturb Bone Lord. Your monthly allowance is higher than others and your life will be much easier. The middle-aged man continued, you two are smart kids, just pay attention. As he said that, the middle-aged man sent the manservant to Bone Lord's courtyard and left. After the middle-aged man left, the 2 manservants looked at each other in dismay. Then they looked at Bone Lord's direction. The 2 of them walked into the courtyard silently. Yiqing Luo, who was in the dark, raised her brows when she saw this scene. Those 2 manservants didn't look as innocent and harmless as they looked on the surface. They acted so afraid in front of the middle-aged man. But when the middle-aged man left, the 2 of them walked into the courtyard without any hesitation. Interesting. This was a sign that something was going to happen. The Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace glanced at Yiqing Luo's honeyed smile and frowned slightly. What are you smiling at? Yiqing Luo didn't turn back to look at him as her gaze was fixed on the 2 manservants. There's a good show to watch, I'm happy. Good show? The Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace frowned in puzzlement. Just as he finished his words. Soon after, the 2 servants quickly approached the Bloodbone Barbarian King's room. Their speed was so fast that it wasn't something an ordinary manservant could possess. The Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace was stunned for a moment as his gaze stopped on Yiqing Luo for a moment, as though he was puzzled why Yiqing Luo knew that there was something wrong with those 2 manservants. After looking for a long time, he didn't see anything strange. Yiqing Luo didn't bother about him. Only then did he turn his eyes back to the servant. The 2 servants were clearly well trained. One on the left and the other on the right, they leaped to the door of the barbaric Bloodbone King's room. One of them took out a bamboo tube and inserted it into the window. The servant placed his mouth on the bamboo tube and was about to put the medicine in. Suddenly, his expression changed. He abruptly left the bamboo tube and leaped backwards. The servant's body fell heavily to the ground. Black blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. When the other servant saw this, he looked at the bamboo pipe that was stuck in the window but did not move at all. Realizing something, he quickly turned around and wanted to escape. But just as he made his move, the tightly shut door suddenly opened. A terrifying profound light shot out from the door. In an instant, the servant who had escaped was brought back. A tall and straight figure walked out of the room. The Bloodbone Barbarian King looked dejected. His brocade robe was covered with wine stains and his long black hair was messy like a chicken's nest. He didn't know what else was stuck on it. How could he still have the elegance he once had? But, no matter how disheveled and dejected he looked, the moment he walked out, the frightening aura emanating from his body was enough to intimidate people's hearts. When they saw him, the two servants who had fallen on the ground immediately climbed up and looked at the blood-bone barbaric king vigilantly. End of this chapter. Chapter 4505. Who are you? What's your purpose in approaching me? The barbaric blood king's voice was cold. The servants looked at each other. One of them wiped the blood off his lips, got up and slapped the direction of the barbaric blood king. The other quickly surrounded the barbaric blood king from behind. The two servants showed their killing moves when they attacked. The barbaric blood king sneered, his eyes full of contempt. In the face of the servants' attack, he did not even budge an inch. Standing on the spot, he casually waved his sleeves. The powerful dark wave was like a surging wave. With a bang, he stood in front of the two servants, blocking their way. The two servants were thrown to the ground by the powerful force, spitting out mouthfuls of blood. We were just ordered to test Bone Lord's identity. The servants knew that they were no match for the barbaric blood king, so they immediately lowered their stance. The first servant explained, because the name of Bone Lord is the same as the sinner from the divine realm, so someone offered a high price to let us test the relationship between you and the sinner from the divine realm. Sinner? The barbaric blood king's eyes darkened and a sharp glint flashed across his eyes. We know that you are definitely not that sinner, but the other party offered a high price, so we just came to test. The second servant hurriedly said. The barbaric blood king frowned slightly and did not speak for a long time. The expression on his face was very indifferent. The silent look on his face. This caused the two servants to tremble in fear. Their eyes were filled with unconcealable fear and dread. They did not expect, the strength of this person called Bone Monarch was actually so high. Trembling with fear, they waited for the barbaric blood king's verdict. However, the barbaric blood bone king's expression did not change as he turned around and returned to his room. With a bang, he closed the door once again. The two servants outside the door were dumbfounded. What did this mean? Bone Lord did not kill them? And did not intend to punish them? Could it be that he let them go? The two servants stared at each other blankly for a long time. Finally, they carefully walked out of the courtyard. With a limp and a tentative step, he turned his head back with every step. He walked out of the courtyard. No one stopped him. The two servants shuddered in fear and eagerly wanted to escape. Just as they supported each other and were about to leave, a hand suddenly appeared in front of them. Then, a black shadow flashed past his eyes. They only had time to see a black robe. Then, his feet left the ground. He could hear the sound of the wind whistling in his ears. By the time their feet touched the ground again, they saw a figure shrouded in a black robe and emitting an austere aura standing before them. The two servants were so scared that their legs went soft. They knelt on the ground and begged for mercy. Bone Lord, spare us. Bone Lord, spare us. We won't dare to do it again. We won't dare to. If you listen obediently, no one will kill you. Suddenly, a clear and melodious voice of a woman entered their ears. The two of them were stunned, and their begging and wailing stopped abruptly. He looked in the direction of the voice. Behind the black-robed man, a fairy-like woman in fiery red clothes walked out and looked at them with a smile. That smile was bright and dazzling. But the two only felt an inexplicable chill on their backs. You? Who are you? The servant asked in horror. Chapter 4506. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled into a smile. you don't need to bother about who we are. As long as you answer my questions obediently, you will be safe and sound." The two attendants exchanged glances, weighing the strength of both sides. Although he really couldn't tell how strong the black-robed man and the young and beautiful woman were, he still couldn't tell. But in terms of their temperament, the two of them decisively chose to be obedient. "Ask away." From the mouths of the two servants. Yi Qing Luo roughly understood the current situation. It was probably, from the memories before that, Feng Gu heavily injured the blood-bone barbarian king and announced to the public, the divine emperor had personally suppressed the blood-bone barbarian king and annihilated it. From now on, there will no longer be a barbaric blood-bone king. As for the matter of Feng Gu saving the blood-bone barbarian king, no one mentioned it at all. Other than Feng Gu himself, no one knew that the barbaric blood-bone king was still alive. This explanation matched up with the version which Yi Qing Luo had heard from Dmo Xian previously. However, Yi Qing Luo expressed that there must be something that she didn't know. After all, it was the barbaric blood-bone king's memory. There were some things that the barbaric blood-bone king didn't know, she couldn't see it either. He could only imagine and guess. Yi Qing Luo looked at the two footboys for some time and asked again, "Since Bone Lord has already died in God Realm, why do you still want to probe that Bone Lord's identity?" The two servants hugged each other and explained while trembling. This bone mansion had suddenly appeared in the heaven realm. No one knew the identity of the master of the bone mansion. However, looking at the luxurious decorations of the Gu residence, it was clear that he was not an ordinary person. There were also profound practitioners who wanted to occupy the Gu residence's territory. They were heading to the Gu residence to stir up trouble. There was only entry and no exit. At first, there were people who didn't believe it. However, as more and more profound practitioners disappeared from the world after entering the Bone Mansion. As time passed, no one dared to take half a step into the Gu residence. As a result, the Bone Mansion became a strange and mysterious existence. Everyone in the Heaven Domain's ancient city was very curious about the Bone residence. But no one dared to test him. There was once when someone outside the Bone residence shouted the words Bone Lord. Everyone knew. The master of this Bone Mansion was called Bone Monarch. However, no one had ever seen this person called Bone Lord. Bone Lord, this name was exactly the same as the name of the sinner who had been suppressed by the divine emperor and reduced to ashes. However, no one would lump the two Bone Lords together. After all, the emperor of the God Emperor had personally said that the sinner of the God world had already been reduced to ashes. However, the two servants expressed that they also did not know the appearance of the person who made the bid. They also did not know why that person would be so interested in Bone Lord. They took the money and entered the Gu residence to do their work. That person, when did he look for you? Yi Qing Luo narrowed her eyes as she asked. The servant replied, 3 days ago. 3 days, Yi Qing Luo's eyes flashed past a meaningful smile as she asked again, then have you all heard of the matter regarding the Bone Lord being annihilated by the Sovereign of God? The manservant was stunned. He shook his head and said, that's a matter of the immortal realm. How can we, the people of the heaven realm, get any information? Yi Qing Luo's brows rose as she seemed to be thinking about something. Manservant B suddenly thought of something as he patted his head. Speaking of this, I did hear a few seniors mentioning about the gossip in the immortal realm. But whether it's true or false, I dare not guarantee. Please remember this book's domain name. Com, Wonderful Book House mobile version website. Com. Chapter 4507. Tell me about it. Yi Qing Luo wasn't sure which period of time she had entered into this memory. But based on her current speculation, it should be at least half a year or more since that memory. Half a year. Bloodbone Barbaric King had yet to recover from Feng Ji's serious injury. Look at his dispirited look. Apparently, he didn't know that he was saved by Feng Gu. Yi Qing Luo really wanted to rush out and tell Bloodbone Barbaric King the truth. Unfortunately, this was only a memory that had been born. It wasn't the real world. Even if it changed the story in the memory, it couldn't change the fact that it had been born. Servant B recalled his senior's words and said, "I heard that. The Emperor of God fell in love with someone and gave birth to a child." Yi Qing Luo nodded. This piece of news was indeed true. Feng Gu was indeed pregnant, and gave birth to a child for that person called Ah Huang. It seemed that this servant B's news was not fake. I heard that everyone in the God realm was trying to find out the identity of the person who fell in love with the Emperor of God. But it seemed that no one knew who that person was. But later on, it was said that the Emperor of God's child had disappeared and the child's father had also disappeared. Now the God realm is in a mess and the Emperor of God is looking for his child everywhere. Servant B's words made Yi Qing Luo's eyes moved slightly. The child was missing? And that person called Ah Huang was also missing? The child's father had run away with the child? After Servant B finished, he looked at Yi Qing Luo carefully. I have said what I should say, now. Now can we? Yi Qing Luo waved her hand. The two of them were in a hurry to escape. The palace lord of secluded Darkness Palace looked coldly at the two figures who were leaving and turned to Yi Qing Luo. "You believe what he said?" Yi Qing Luo raised her brows. Why not? There was no need for the servant to lie. What's more, the God realm and heaven realm were separated by thousands of miles. They were two different worlds. For the heaven realm to know of any news in the God realm, it would at most be an extremely explosive event. It was true that the Divine Emperor was pregnant and had a child. The disappearance of this child and the child's father in the God realm might not be fake. However, why would this memory appear in the barbaric Bloodbone King's memory? Could it be, the disappearance of Feng Ji's child had something to do with the barbaric Bloodbone King? The person who probed if the Bloodbone Barbarian King was the Bone Lord of the Divine World was also someone from the Divine World? Or perhaps, Feng Ji's men? No, it shouldn't be. At that time, when the two servants approached the Bloodbone Barbarian King's room, their bodies carried a murderous aura. Then, he attacked the barbaric Bloodbone King. It was also merciless. If it was Feng Ji's people, it was absolutely impossible to kill the Bloodbone Barbarian King. She had a nagging feeling that there was something in all of this that she had overlooked, or perhaps, she had yet to understand. Did you think of something? The palace master of the Netherworld Palace noticed the change in the girl's expression. Yi Qing Luo kept her thoughts as she raised her eyes to look at him. Meeting with that pair of deep black eyes, she couldn't see through his emotions. Her lips curled slightly, revealing an arc that didn't look like a smile. "Whatever I thought of has nothing to do with you, //." Sogu. Chapter 4508. Yi Qing Luo, now that we're in the same place, we're on the same boat. The palace lord of the Netherworld Palace didn't like this feeling of being isolated by Yi Qing Luo. When Yi Qing Luo heard that, she couldn't help but laughed out. "Don't. You and I are not the same kind of people and our motives are different." She laughed and took 2 steps back. He widened the distance between him and the palace master of the Netherworld Palace. Then, she looked at him with a smile. "You want to find the secrets in the Bloodbone Barbaric King's memories for the Palace of Gloomy Darkness. As for me, I'm just here to take a look and see if I can give you some trouble." She paused and spread her hands. "So, we're actually standing on opposite sides." The palace master of the secluded palace stared at her with a hurricane in his eyes. Yi Qing Luo tilted her head as the corners of her lips curled upwards, as she continued with a beaming smile. "So, what do I know? How could I possibly tell you?" Yi Qing Luo. The palace lord's voice had sunk a lot. His hands under the black robe clenched into fists. he seemed to be suppressing some sort of emotion. His gaze towards Yiqing Luo grew deeper and deeper. Don't shout at me. It's useless. Yiqing Luo dug her ears. Why don't we have a fight? If you win me, I might tell you what I know. The palace master of the Netherworld Palace was obviously depressed. You know that I won't do anything to you. No, I don't know. Yiqing Luo hurriedly waved her hands, putting on an expression as though she wanted to cut off all relations with him. Don't portray yourself to be so affectionate in front of me. Yiqing Luo. The palace lord's tone became heavier, unable to accept Yiqing Luo's increasingly incisive words. Facing his anger, Yiqing Luo didn't have much of an emotion. She indifferently curled her lips and waved her hand at him. All right, let's disperse here. Go and complete your mission. You're not coming with me? The palace master of secluded darkness palace pursed her lips. Do you think that by following me, you will be able to learn things that you can't? Yiqing Luo rolled her eyes at him. If I don't want you to know, and don't want secluded palace to succeed, do you think there's any use for you to follow me? The palace master of the Netherworld Palace's mouth moved. He did not want to be separated from Yiqing Luo. But what Yiqing Luo said was right. Between him and Yiqing Luo, it was an opposing situation. He came here. It was an order from his master. This was his mission. As for Yiqing Luo, she naturally wouldn't allow him to complete the mission so easily. In the end, he didn't say anything. Yiqing Luo only gave a sarcastic smile. Then, he turned around and disappeared in front of the palace master of Gloomy Palace. Far away from the palace master of Gloomy Palace, Yiqing Luo felt that the air was much fresher. There was a person who was watching her, and there was a high possibility that he was behind her. No matter how he thought about it, he felt goosebumps and uneasy. Although he wouldn't really hurt her. But, this kind of injury was not a threat to her life. As for the rest, it was hard to say. Yiqing Luo returned to the Gu residence. He found the courtyard of the Blood-Bone Barbarian King with ease. At this moment, the courtyard was quiet. It was no different from when Yiqing Luo left earlier. The footboy's blood was still on the ground. It could be seen that the Blood-Bone Barbarian King did not open the door after the servant left. Yiqing Luo concealed her presence. She quietly got closer to the Blood-Bone Barbarian King's room. She wasn't sure if the Blood-Bone Barbarian King would discover her approaching. Chapter 4509. After all, the strength of the two servants just now was not weak. He hadn't even gotten close. He was discovered by the Blood-Bone Barbarian King. She did not think that her strength was above that of the Blood-Bone Barbarian King. However, even if they were discovered by the barbaric Blood-Bone King, she wasn't too worried. After all, she still had the teleportation secret technique to save her life. But when Yiqing Luo tried to get closer, there was no movement in the room. Yiqing Luo walked as she tried to go around to the back of the room. Then, he tried to open the window at the back. As soon as he opened the window, the smell of alcohol assailed his nostrils. The interior of the house was dark, and it was impossible to see the surroundings clearly. There was a moment of silence. The people in the room didn't seem to notice the commotion outside. Yiqing Luo lifted up her skirt and squeezed into the window. The stench of blood and alcohol in the room was unbearable. Yiqing Luo covered her mouth and nose as she frowned as she walked in. She had entered the Blood-Bone Barbarian King's room no less than 100 times in the Gu residence. As for the furnishings inside, he could practically come and go with his eyes closed. The room in her memory was exactly the same as the one she had seen before. Bang! There was the sound of something falling to the ground. Yiqing Luo was shocked. Soon, the room became quiet again. She remained silent for a long time before approaching the direction of the sound. He bypassed the bedroom. Yi Qing Luo walked to the front of the main hall. In the darkness, he could vaguely see a human silhouette lying on the ground, motionless. It was the barbaric Blood-Bone King. Was he drunk? Yi Qing Luo squinted her eyes slightly as she hid herself behind the pillar. After an unknown amount of time, the barbaric Blood-Bone King finally moved. He moved. There was the sound of bottles clinking. It could be seen that there were a lot of wine bottles and wine glasses beside him. He struggled to get up from the ground. The sound of bottles crashing into each other could be heard as they fell to the ground. In the quiet and dark room, it was extremely ear-piercing. He staggered to his feet and groped for a moment on the table. Finally, he found a bottle of wine. He began to gulp down the wine again. Before the pot of wine was finished, Yi Zichen's eyes lit up. He suddenly fell limp to the ground again. The wine pot fell to the ground, filling the room with the fragrance of wine. The broken pieces of the wine flask splashed towards Yi Qing Luo's feet. This was simply the rhythm of leading a befuddled life. He drank when he woke up, slept when he was drunk, and continued drinking when he woke up, no matter how good one's physique was. If this went on, that's still alcohol poisoning, right? It was estimated that ever since the barbaric Blood-Bone King came to the Heaven Realm, it had maintained this state. Looking at the Blood-Bone Barbaric King's current state, he really did look like he had fallen out of love. Yi Qing Luo squatted behind the pillar for quite some time. The Blood-Bone Barbaric King was indeed drunk and unconscious. She simply walked out from the darkness. However, the moment she moved, there was no reaction yet. The sound of wine pots clinking against each other could be heard. In the next instant, a black shadow attacked him. The strong smell of alcohol filled his nose. Her wrist was tightly clasped by a cold hand. F***ck. Yi Qing Luo let out a curse as she abruptly clasped that icy cold hand, trying to avoid it. But that strength was extremely strong. It was as if he was grabbing her hand and pulling her whole body into his arms. The smell of alcohol almost made Yi Qing Luo faint. Was this barbaric Blood-Bone King pretending to be drunk? Deliberately luring her out? Yi Qing Luo cursed in her heart and was about to teleport away. Suddenly, she heard a choked voice, transmitted into her ears, "Feng Gu. Feng Gu, hurry up and read the latest update. Download address, phone reading." Chapter 45:10. Feng Gu. He was calling. Feng Gu. Yi Qing Luo's movements paused slightly. This pause made Blood-Bone Barbaric King's arms hug her tightly. That strength almost kneaded Yi Qing Luo into two halves. Yi Qing Luo wanted to struggle. But just as she moved, Blood-Bone Barbaric King panicked and increased his strength. He hugged her even tighter. As he hugged her, he spoke in a choked voice, "Feng Gu, don't be angry with me. Feng Gu, I know I'm wrong, don't leave me. Don't." Yi Qing Luo. Blood-Bone Barbaric King had treated her as Feng Gu. She stopped struggling. Blood-Bone Barbaric King then calmed down a little. "Feng Gu. You came to look for me, you still came to look for me. You can't let go of me, right?" Yi Qing Luo felt uncomfortable being hugged, but she didn't dare to struggle too much. She could only purse her lips and said word by word, "Let go of me first, you're using too much strength and it stinks." Her words made Blood-Bone Barbaric King stiffen. Yi Qing Luo's heart also jumped. Could it be that her voice was different from Feng Ji's and Blood-Bone Barbaric King could tell? She immediately became vigilant. But unexpectedly, Blood-Bone Barbaric King quickly let go of her and took a step back, like a child who had done something wrong. He lowered his head. "Feng Gu, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. Don't be angry with me, I won't touch you, I won't touch you." As he said that, he lowered his eyes to look at his messy body. He hurriedly tugged at his clothes, as though he wanted to take it off, but Yi Qing Luo was around. I'm going to change now. He had just taken 2 steps when he hurriedly swayed his body back. No, no. If I leave, what if you leave too? That careful look made Yi Qing Luo inexplicably uncomfortable. Bloodbone barbaric king, he really loved Feng Gu. This was the first time she saw Bloodbone barbaric king put himself in such a lowly position. Even when he was facing Feng Gu, he didn't care. She had never been in this way. Yi Qing Luo sighed, don't go change, go rest. No. I don't need to rest. Bloodbone barbaric king's emotions tensed up, are you leaving? You still don't intend to forgive me. You still don't intend to take me back with you, right? Yi Qing Luo frowned. What kind of plot development was this? According to the previous memories. No, the Bloodbone barbarian king had misunderstood that Feng Gu wanted to kill him. After that, he should be filled with resentment. Why was he the one apologizing now? Yi Qing Luo really couldn't understand it. She looked at the clearly unconscious barbaric Bloodbone king. It just so happened that he could take this opportunity to sound him out. Yi Qing Luo coughed lightly as she recalled Feng Ji's tone and asked, don't tell me. You don't hate me? The barbaric Bloodbone king was silent. His head was lowered, and it was hard to see his expression in the darkness. After a long while, he slowly said, I don't hate you. I know that you blame me for doing such a heaven-defying thing. The words you said to me that day were all fake. It was all because you were angry at me, Yi Qing Luo. This was just an excuse he came up with to make himself feel better, wasn't it? In that memory, Yi Qing Luo couldn't tell. That Feng Gu intentionally said those angry words because he was angry at him. I won't do it again. Things that you don't like, I won't do it again. Bloodbone barbaric king hurriedly raised his head as he swore seriously. Chapter 45:11. The next moment. His entire aura was as gentle as a pet. Feng Gu, don't leave me alone in the heaven realm. Don't leave me so far away from you. Yi Qing Luo didn't know how to answer. After all, she wasn't the real Feng Gu. He also did not know what kind of mentality and thoughts Feng Gu, who had wanted to seriously injure and kill him, had when he attacked the Bloodbone barbarian king. He also didn't understand why Feng Gu would exhaust his own strength to save the barbaric Bloodbone king from the gates of hell. The story of these two was too complicated and melodramatic. Yi Qing Luo didn't answer. The Bloodbone barbaric king muttered to himself, his tone was filled with fear and uneasiness, it's fine if you don't want me to return to the God realm. Then you can also find time to visit me. Yi Qing Luo. Was he willing to be a kept man outside? Repeat 500 words, refresh in 20 minutes. Ah, the Yuan IP grand ceremony is too tempting, sob, I was wrong. The next moment. His entire aura was as gentle as a pet. Feng Gu, don't leave me alone in the heaven realm. Don't leave me so far away from you. Yi Qing Luo didn't know how to answer. After all, she wasn't the real Feng Gu. She wasn't sure what kind of mentality and thoughts Feng Gu had when he tried to injure and kill her, to take action against the Bloodbone barbaric king. He also didn't understand why Feng Gu would exhaust his own strength to save the barbaric Bloodbone king from the gates of hell. The story of these two was too complicated and melodramatic. Yi Qing Luo didn't answer. The Bloodbone barbaric king muttered to himself, his tone was filled with fear and uneasiness, it's fine if you don't want me to return to the God realm. Then it's fine if you can find time to visit me. Yi Qing Luo. Was he willing to be a kept man outside? The next moment. His entire aura was as gentle as a pet. Feng Gu, don't leave me alone in the heaven realm. Don't leave me so far away from you. Yi Qing Luo didn't know how to answer. After all, she was not the real Feng Gu. He also did not know what kind of mentality and thoughts Feng Gu, who had wanted to seriously injure and kill him, had when he attacked the Bloodbone Barbarian King. He also did not understand why Feng Gu had exhausted all his strength to save the Bloodbone Barbaric King from the gates of hell. The story of these two people was too complicated, too melodramatic. Yi Qing Luo didn't reply. The Bloodbone Barbaric King muttered to himself. His tone was filled with fear and uneasiness. It's fine if you don't want me to return to the God world. Then, it's fine if you can find time to visit me. Yi Qing Luo, was he willing to be a kept man outside? The next moment, his entire aura was as gentle as a pet. Her voice was also very soft and slow. Feng Gu, don't leave me alone in the heaven realm. Don't leave me so far away from you. Yi Qing Luo didn't know how to answer. After all, she was not the real Feng Gu. She also did not know what kind of mentality and thoughts Feng Gu, who had wanted to seriously injure and kill him, had when he attacked the Bloodbone Barbaric King. She also did not understand why Feng Gu had exhausted all his energy to save the Bloodbone Barbaric King from the gates of hell. The story of these two people was too complicated, too melodramatic. Yi Qing Luo did not answer. Chapter 45:12. Feng Gu held his arm tightly with both hands and looked solemnly at the Bloodbone Barbaric King. Her voice was hoarse and choked with sobs. I know, if it's Gu, he won't refuse any of my requests. Let me be selfish for the last time. You must take good care of my child. I only trust you, only you can trust me. When she said this, her tone was filled with endless sorrow. What on earth happened? The Bloodbone Barbaric King sobered up a lot after hearing Feng Ji's solemn request. He shook his muddled head hard. Feng Gu, did something happen in the divine realm? This child, why? I don't have time to explain to you. Feng Gu hurriedly interrupted him, her face full of pleading and expectation. The only person I can trust now is you. I'll give the child to you, no matter who asks you for the child, you can't give it to him. Her eyes fell deeply on the child. It was as if she wanted to engrave the child's appearance in her heart. It was so painful and sorrowful. Gu, please, you must take good care of the child. After saying this, Feng Gu forcefully closed her eyes and withdrew her gaze from the child. Without waiting for the Bloodbone Barbaric King to speak, Feng Gu had already rushed out of the courtyard and disappeared. The Bloodbone Barbaric King held the child in his arms and quickly chased after her. However, Feng Ji's figure, along with his aura, had completely disappeared. If it wasn't for the fact that the child in his arms had confirmed Feng Ji's appearance, the Bloodbone Barbaric King would have thought, all of this was just a hallucination. The Bloodbone Barbaric King stood in the middle of the courtyard for a long time with the child in his arms. He couldn't come back to his senses. It wasn't until the child grabbed his hand and bit it in his mouth that the Bloodbone Barbaric King's consciousness came back. He stiffened his head and looked down blankly at the child in his arms. Wrapped in soft and warm satin, the little guy was really small. He was wrinkled and not very good-looking. The little chubby hand grabbed one of his hands and stuffed it into its mouth. Saliva stuck to his fingers. He couldn't feel the slightest bit of annoyance or impatience. Maybe, it was because the little one had a pair of round, distinct black and white eyes. Because, he was extremely similar to Feng Gu. The barbaric Bloodbone King stiffened. He turned around and returned to his room with the baby in his arms. As soon as he stepped into the room, the baby squeaked and waved his little hands. He even wrinkled his little face. The barbaric Bloodbone King realized that the house was in a mess. Perhaps even the smell of the mass grave was not as bad as this house. He left the room and closed the door. Very quickly, the middle-aged man who Yi Qing Luo saw earlier, who brought along a manservant to the courtyard, who was also the butler of the Gu residence, brought along the cleaning staff. Then, he asked the barbaric Bloodbone King to bring the child to another clean house. As for the reason why the Bloodbone Barbarian King suddenly had another child, the butler was very tactful and did not ask any questions. The Bloodbone Barbarian King asked Gu San to look after the child, while he quickly went to wash himself, getting rid of the smell on his body. The group of people was extremely busy. Although she was a little flustered, she wasn't very good with children. But in the end, it was not a big mistake. However, that child loved to nestle in the arms of the barbaric Bloodbone King. Giving Gu San a hug for a while, Gu San's face was grabbed a few times by the child. If it wasn't for the fact that the barbaric Bloodbone King valued the child so much, Gu San would probably fly into a rage. Chapter 45-13. Yiqing Luo was in the dark, silently watching everything that was happening in front of her. The Gu residence's secret guards were walking back and forth. Bloodbone Barbaric King was walking back and forth. But no one had discovered her existence at all. If it wasn't for the fact that she was able to converse with the others in her memory. If it wasn't for the fact that Bloodbone Barbaric King would have mistaken her for Feng Gu when he was drunk, she would have suspected it. Bloodbone Barbaric King and the others actually couldn't see her. Otherwise, based on Bloodbone Barbaric King's ability and the Gu residence's secret guard's ability, how was it possible that they hadn't detected her existence for such a long time? Yiqing Luo expressed a dazed look. After a day's worth of torment, Bloodbone Barbaric King fed and coaxed the child. He who had just become a father for the first time was already mentally exhausted. He placed the child by the side as he leaned against the head, gently caressing the little baby's head as he panted heavily. Until now, he still felt that all these were not real. All of a sudden, he had a child. Bloodbone Barbaric King lowered his eyelids as he gazed deeply at the little baby's sleeping face. His brows seemed to be tainted with a sliver of memories of the past. Your mother is really magnanimous, to hand you over to me just like that. He burst out laughing. Wasn't she worried that I would take revenge on her child because of what she had done to me? This sentence ended. He chuckled in a low voice. But this laugh was filled with obvious pain. Of course she wasn't worried. From the start till the end, she knew how much I loved her, so she dared to hand you over to me without any worries. His hand gently caressed the baby's smooth and tender skin. The minute he touched that piece of softness, the strength of his fingers subconsciously lightened. He was afraid that if he wasn't careful, he would cut the little baby's tender skin. You are the same as your mother, heartless. Even in a stranger's house, you can still sleep so soundly. Bloodbone Barbaric King's tone had an obvious change. She knew that I had no way to force myself and hurt her heart, right? His gaze towards the little baby became gentler and gentler. Her low murmur was also very soft. He slowly closed his eyes. His hand was still on the baby's shoulder, and his strength was very gentle. Although I don't know what exactly happened in the divine realm, and I don't know what happened to your mother, but since your mother handed you over to me, I will take good care of you. In his mind, the woman said it over and over again. I only trust you, and only you can trust me. The only person I can trust now is you. Believe she really did know about his feelings for her. After an unknown period of time, the barbaric Bloodbone King's breathing slowly calmed down. Inside the house, the two of them were sleeping soundly. Yiqing Luo stayed for a long time. Only then did he slowly walk out from the darkness. As she quietly approached, her eyes were fixed on the barbaric Bloodbone King. He did not disturb the Bloodbone Barbarian King even when he reached the edge. She held her breath and looked past the Bloodbone Barbarian King to the little baby. It was a small ball. It was wrapped in a soft silk cloth. Little Zhao's chubby fingers had unknowingly grabbed one of the Bloodbone Barbarian King's fingers. Not knowing why. When her gaze fell onto the little baby's upper body, Yiqing Luo's mouth was filled with an indescribable emotion. Like, something seemed to be burning in her chest. It wasn't that kind of scorching feeling. Just, some kind of flame was fluctuating, surging bit by bit. Chapter 45:14. This feeling drove her bit by bit towards the bed. She wanted to see what this baby looked like. But just as her gaze was about to land on the baby's face, her eyes suddenly turned black. The ground beneath her feet shook violently. The earth shook and the surrounding space started to distort. Yiqing Luo. Motherf **Ker, was this intentional? At such a crucial moment, she changed the spatial memory. She purposely didn't want her to see what the baby looked like. Yiqing Luo ridiculed endlessly in her heart. After the earth-shaking feeling, she opened her eyes again. She was no longer in the bone residence. What entered her eyes was a desolate mountain range. The surroundings were so desolate that there wasn't even a single tree. The sky was strangely oppressive and gloomy. Yiqing Luo frowned as she surveyed the surroundings. Based on her previous experience, usually when she reached this place, coupled with the surrounding environment, Yiqing Luo was certain this memory was going to stir up trouble again. The previous part was still half cruel and half sweet. Now it was going to start the sadomasochistic mode. Yiqing Luo, who had experience, indicated she didn't need to specially look for the brute blood bone king. Anyway, as an outsider who entered the brute blood bone king's memory, this memory would appear in front of her sooner or later. But there was a little doubt. Previously, when she met the Lord of Secluded Palace, he obviously wasn't clear about what she was talking about. Brute blood bone king's memory. Which meant, until now, the Lord of Secluded Palace hadn't seen brute blood bone king's memory. What she and the Lord of Secluded Palace had experienced was different. What was going on? Was it because the brute blood bone king's subconscious didn't want this memory to be known by the Secluded Palace? Then why? But she could clearly see every piece of memory. Just as she was thinking, suddenly, she heard a sound beside her ear. Yiqing Luo's brows twitched slightly. The sadomasochistic love was about to begin. She surveyed the surroundings. In such a desolate place, she really couldn't find any place to hide. In the end, she could only climb to a higher mountain. From this angle, she could only lie on the ground to carefully look at what was happening below. The dense black aura gave off a cold, suffocating feeling. Below, a figure ran up first. That person was dressed in a black robe, and he was holding a baby in his arms. The strong winds blew against his sleeves. Profound waves rippled in the air. Monstrous waves surged. This terrifying, imposing manner made Yiqing Luo couldn't help but hold her breath, as she retracted her own presence even more. He lay on the huge rock, not daring to move. This scene was inexplicably familiar. Not waiting for Yiqing Luo's mind to recall this familiar scene, a woman in a fiery red dress came quickly. Yiqing Luo, there was no need to reminisce. This scene was exactly the same as when Feng Gu had heavily injured the barbaric Bloodbone King. Except for the venue. Apart from the Bloodbone Barbarian King, there was a baby in his arms. Feng Gu held his long sword, his eyes cold as he stared at the barbaric Bloodbone King. No, more accurately speaking, she was staring at the baby in his arms. Yiqing Luo gauged with her eyes from this distance. The baby was much bigger than when Feng Gu had carried him in her previous memory. Based on the time, it should have been more than 3 months. Give me the baby. Chapter 45:15. Bloodbone Barbaric King hugged the child in his arms tightly as a chilly intent flashed past his eyes. He carried the baby and had no intention to let go. What do you treat this place of mine as? His tone was extremely cold. Even his expression was so sunken that it wasn't the same as when he was facing Feng Gu. The atmosphere between the two of them was extremely strange. Both of them were entangled with each other, as though they wanted to suppress the other party. Yiqing Luo's heart was filled with apprehension. She didn't know what had happened to Bloodbone Barbaric King to actually use such an attitude when facing Feng Gu. Even earlier when he displayed his forbidden skill and pretended to be evil to deceive Feng Gu. She had never seen such a chilly attitude. Between the two of them, was there any conflict? And why did Feng Gu use such an attitude to ask for the child from Bloodbone Barbaric King? And even using her long sword to point at Bloodbone Barbaric King? At that time, she was the one who sent the baby to Bloodbone Barbaric King, wasn't it? Below, the two of them were still confronting each other. Feng Ji's veiled face was filled with anger. Bloodbone Barbaric King, return the child to me, this is my child. Don't force me to make a move on you. Bloodbone Barbaric King's pupils contracted slightly. His ears were filled with Feng Ji's voice. Bloodbone Barbaric King. She called him, Bloodbone Barbaric King. She didn't call him Gu, it was an exclusive title that belonged to her alone. Was she trying to break off relations with him? Bloodbone Barbaric King's heart was in turmoil. He clenched his fists tightly as his eyes were burning with anger. He lowered his head and looked at the baby who was giggling at him and waving his hands at him. The surging emotions in his eyes were even more intense. As though he was in an intense struggle. He had entered into a frenzied state. Return the child to me. Feng Gu saw that he didn't respond for a long time. The chilly intent in her eyes was filled with a thick murderous intent. Her long sword moved and struck towards Bloodbone Barbaric King. Her action was clean and crisp without any hesitation. A dangerous aura shrouded Bloodbone Barbaric King. Bloodbone Barbaric King suddenly regained his senses as he raised his hand and waved out a burst of profound wave, blocking Feng Ji's attack. He held the baby tightly and leaped to the other side. Are you crazy? The child is still in my hands, what if he gets hurt? Feng Ji's attack just now. If he had been just a little slower. He wasn't the only one who was severely injured. Even this child would suffer a calamity. Did she hate and loathe him that much? You don't even care about your own child? That's my child. What I do has nothing to do with you. Feng Ji's words were cold and emotionless. Bloodbone Barbarian King, don't think that I don't know the reason why you won't return my child to me. She gripped her sword tightly, and the edge of the sword shone with a cold light. Isn't it because of that Divine Phoenix profound heart jade in her body? Feng Gu spat out word by word. His tone was filled with ridicule. Unfortunately, you've miscalculated something. The so-called Divine Phoenix profound heart jade is something that only the next Divine Emperor has the qualifications to use. Even if you hold the child in your hands, you still won't be able to display the true use of the Divine Phoenix profound heart jade. The Bloodbone Barbaric Monarch's face turned darker and darker as the woman continued to speak. His expression also became extremely ugly. The surrounding atmosphere fell into an icy cold state. At this moment, Yiqing Luo who was sprawled on the huge rock. Her entire body was icy cold. Her heart was pounding violently. Divine Phoenix profound heart jade. That baby's body contained the Divine Phoenix profound heart jade? Chapter 45:16. Yiqing Luo's hand slowly pressed onto her own heart. This place, there was also a Divine Phoenix profound heart jade. She held her breath. There was an idea forming in her mind. But she didn't dare to think too much about it. He didn't dare to think about it. But, his mind kept repeating the same words over and over again. the baby's body contained the divine phoenix profound heart jade. In her body, there was the divine phoenix profound heart jade. In this world, would 2 divine phoenix profound heart jades appear? She suppressed the surging emotions in her chest and looked down again. His gaze unconsciously fell on Feng Gu. The Emperor of Divine Emperors, blood-bone barbaric king, quickly give me the child. Feng Ge's stern voice interrupted Yi Qing Luo's thoughts. At this moment, Feng Ge's eyes were overflowing with hostility. There was no trace of her usual gentleness and elegance. The barbaric blood-bone king tightened his grip on the baby in his arms. His expression was cold. What did you just say? The profound heart jade in this child's body is the divine phoenix profound heart jade? Don't play dumb. If you didn't know the use of this child, why didn't you give him to me? Feng Gu sneered. The barbaric blood-bone king's face turned ashen. He gnashed his teeth and glared at Chu Yang. You asked me for this child because of this profound heart jade? Feng Ge's eyes were full of disdain. Don't look at me like that. It's like I'm sorry. This is my child. I can do whatever I want. It has nothing to do with you. She waved her sword. The sharp blade shone with dazzling cold light under the reflection of the mystic light. Bloodbone barbarian king, the current you, is no match for me. The barbaric blood-bone king's pupils suddenly contracted and he looked down at the child in his arms. You, what do you mean by this? Feng Gu smiled coldly. Don't think that I don't know the consequences of using the forbidden skill. The pupils of the barbaric blood-bone king contracted even more. Yes, after casting the forbidden technique, he would have to pay an equivalent price. There was no end to using forbidden techniques and cultivating forbidden techniques to make himself stronger. However, ever since he was injured by Feng Gu, after the baby was born, since then, he had never touched the forbidden art again. The reason he cultivated the forbidden technique was to protect Feng Gu. He wanted to dispel the restless factors that had ulterior motives towards the child in Feng Ge's womb. Later on, it was meaningless. Moreover, Feng Ge's child was born. After that, to the outside world, he was a dead man, sealed in the heaven realm, unable to go anywhere. He had no intention of continuing to practice forbidden techniques. Therefore, correspondingly, he needed to bear the pain of the backlash caused by the forbidden technique. The current him. Perhaps in the heaven realm, he could be considered an expert. However, in the God world, it was simply not enough. Not to mention that his opponent was the Emperor of the Divine Emperors. Furthermore, in the end, he could not bear to hurt her. Whether it was in the past or now, he was no match for Feng Gu. Give me the child. Seeing that the blood-bone barbarian king did not respond after a long time, Feng Gu had already lost his patience. He raised his long sword and thrust it towards the blood-bone barbarian king. The barbaric blood-bone king was still immersed in his own thoughts and did not react at all. Until the murderous longsword swept past his eyes. Only then did he suddenly react and raise his head. The sharp longsword was coming towards his face. Subconsciously, the barbaric blood-bone king held the child in his arms tightly and quickly avoided the incoming murderous aura. End of this chapter. Chapter 45:17. Oh! But the long sword still brushed past his arm, causing a huge wound. Fresh blood splattered all over the ground. Bloodbone barbaric king quickly took 2 steps back as he stared at Feng Gu with an ugly expression. Give me the child. Feng Gu gritted her teeth. Her eyes were filled with malevolence as she swiftly attacked Bloodbone barbaric king. That move after move was completely merciless. She really wanted to kill him and snatch the child. Bloodbone barbaric king's heart was throbbing in pain. As though he had returned to the past. The scene when she injured him. Her coldness, her ridicule, all her murderous intent towards him. Wah! Bloodbone Barbaric King was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of heart blood. The blood stained his robe. However, he still firmly protected the baby in his arms, not allowing the baby to be stained by the blood in the slightest. The two of them fought each other just like that. Back and forth. From the beginning to the end, Bloodbone Barbaric King only avoided swiftly. Whereas Feng Ji's attacks were swift and violent, her target was the baby. Yiqing Luo, who was on top of the huge rock, felt strange as she watched the scene below. She couldn't explain the strangeness. Only she felt that something was amiss. Feng Ji's goal was very clear, to get the baby back. However, her attacks were too fierce and ruthless. As though she was totally not worried that she would hurt her own child. While Bloodbone Barbaric King, his expression was very unsightly. The gaze he used to look at Feng Gu was filled with unfamiliarity. He was trying his best to protect the child in his arms. Every subconscious action of hers was to protect the child tightly. Yiqing Luo was sure. Bloodbone Barbaric King was unwilling to give the baby to Feng Gu, not because of the so-called Divine Phoenix profound jade heart. It was from his heart. Protecting the baby. But Feng Gu, her actions were too strange. Ya. At this moment, the attack below stirred up waves, setting off thousands of waves. Yellow sand flew everywhere and the ground cracked. It almost blinded Yiqing Luo's eyes. Vaguely, Yiqing Luo saw Bloodbone Barbaric King's body flying out. The baby in his hands also flew out. The little baby was still completely unaware of the current situation. It waved its little hands in the air and squeaked. When Feng Gu saw the child being thrown out, a greedy smile appeared on his face. She threw herself at the baby. She reached out to catch the child. Suddenly, bang! The ground shook violently. Profound waves surged, as if they were sweeping up the yellow sand that filled the sky. Rocks tumbled down. Feng Ji's body was shaken by this sudden movement, causing her to lose her balance. In the blink of an eye, bloody bones that looked like spider webs suddenly emerged from the ground all around him. He quickly caught the baby. Then, he brought it to the Bloodbone Barbarian King's head. He didn't know if it was an illusion. Yiqing Luo looked over from this distance. He had a feeling that the Bloodbone Barbarian monarch's blood bones were different from before. The amount of red liquid on the bloody bones was decreasing. That frighteningly cold aura was also extremely weak. Below, the barbaric Bloodbone King took the baby back into his arms. The Bloodbone Barbarian King quickly formed a shield, blocking in front of Feng Gu. Do you know why I'm unwilling to hand the child over to you? Bloodbone Barbaric King's voice was deep and hoarse. The gaze he gave to Feng Gu became increasingly sinister. Chapter 45:18. The baby that was in her hands flew away again. Feng Ji's face darkened. She stared at the barbaric Blood King with a murderous look. Her eyes were filled with mockery and murderous intent. What? Are you not willing to show your ugly face in front of me? But now, for this child with the Divine Phoenix profound heart jade, you don't care about your image in my heart? What do I have to worry about with the current you? The barbaric Bloodbone King sneered as the corners of his mouth twitched. Yes. In the past, he had never dared to show such an ugly and terrifying face in front of Feng Gu. He would never let Feng Gu see a single bone in his body. In front of Feng Gu, he would always maintain his human form. But, now, there was no need. The sanguineous bones were wriggling in all directions. The barbaric Blood King's upper body was human, and he held the baby tightly in his arms. The lower half of his body was covered with bloody bones. His face was still as handsome as ever. Feng Ji's face was solemn, and her poisonous gaze was locked on the barbaric Blood King. She seemed to be very dissatisfied with his attitude. The barbaric Blood King's hand gently stroked the baby's delicate skin. His thin lips curled up slightly. His face was very pale due to the loss of blood. Back then, you were the one who sent the child to me, and now you want to take him away just like that. What do you think I am? The barbaric Blood King stared into her eyes and said word by word, Feng Gu, in your heart, I have always been a tool to be used, right? He did not want to give the baby to Feng Gu because he could not accept Feng Ji's attitude towards him. Back then, he did not allow her to explain at all. He gave the child that she had with another man to him, the person who loved her deeply. Now, without any explanation, he came to ask for the child. And his attitude was terrible, and he even tried to snatch it. In Feng Ji's heart. What was he? Hearing the barbaric Blood King's words, Feng Ji's eyes were even more vicious. She sneered. Yes, I am using you as a tool. After all, you are very useful, aren't you? You like me, and you do whatever I ask you to do. I just casually lied to you, and you're willing to give up your life for me. These were obviously extremely touching words. But it came out of Feng Ji's mouth. It was bone-chilling cold. Feng Gu sneered. He sneered at the blood-bone barbarian king's reckless sacrifice. Because I know you like me, so you will fulfill my request unconditionally. Do you feel very sad? Feng Gu sneered. Give me the child. This will be the last time we meet. I will never appear in front of you again. You don't have to worry that you will be used by me again. Feng Ji's words were sharp and sarcastic. The barbaric blood-bone king's expression did not change at all. Until she finished her last sentence. The man, whose gaze had been fixed on the baby's face, finally let out a low chuckle. He slowly raised his head. His pale and handsome face was filled with malevolence and madness. He smiled. His smile was strange and treacherous. He looked at Feng Gu, and his words were bone-chilling. You want a child, don't you? Unfortunately. I will not let you get what you want. As soon as he finished his words, the baby in his hand was thrown into the air. In an instant it was densely packed with bloody bones. It was engulfed. Barbaric Blood-Bone King. Feng Ji's eyes were bloodshot because of the sudden change. She screamed the barbaric Blood-Bone King's name, her voice was extremely sharp. Chapter 45:19. Barbaric Blood-Bone King actually. He had used the forbidden technique he had cultivated, to use the infant as nourishment and devour it. How dare you? How dare you touch my child? Feng Ji's sharp voice was filled with rage. She waved her long sword and slashed downwards. The majestic, terrifying, profound ray was about to destroy the heaven and earth. The entire barren mountain began to sink into the ground. The huge rock which Yi Qing Luo was lying on was not spared. She hurriedly steadied herself on the huge rock. Just as she moved, the rock broke apart and fell downwards. Yi Qing Luo took a few steps back to avoid the cracks and tried to find a foothold again. Not right. Something was definitely not right. Feng Ji's madness earlier was not because she was worried about the child. No. It was not that she was not worried. But her tone and attitude was not that kind of worry. Not the grief and anger of a mother who had lost her child. Instead it was like discovering water in the desert and spending so much effort to reach the destination, only to discover that everything was an illusion. That kind. The anger of losing what she had spent so much effort to obtain. There was no pain or sadness. As for barbaric Blood-Bone King, it was even stranger. He actually treated the baby as nourishment and absorbed it into his blood bone. His feelings for the baby. She saw it very clearly, that was absolutely not fake true feelings. How could it be possible to swallow the baby? Furthermore, barbaric blood-bone king swallowed the baby's words. Had it been verified as well? That baby who possessed the divine phoenix profound jade heart was actually not the same person as her? The baby who had been swallowed, was already dead. She was alive and well now. And the most important point was, the God Emperor had passed away and her era was at least 10,000 years apart. 10,000 years. Wasn't she an old demon? Looked like the only explanation was, she might really not be that baby. Just as Yiqing Luo was avoiding the huge rock collapse, the two of them below were already locked in a fierce battle. Barbaric Blood-Bone King had already fallen into a disadvantageous position in the battle. No matter how cold his words were. But when they really started to fight, he unknowingly avoided a direct confrontation with Feng Gu. But the more they exchanged blows, the barbaric Blood-Bone King could clearly see Feng Ji's twisted face. The horror in his eyes was filled with venom. Feng Gu was completely different from the Feng Gu in his memories. It was just like, they were not the same person at all. In the blink of an eye, Feng Ji's sword swept past and pierced straight into the Blood-Bone Barbarian King's chest. When the sword pierced through his heart, he could still see the disdain and anger in Feng Ji's eyes. Intense pain and dizziness caused by excessive blood loss. He could no longer maintain the form of a blood bone. She fainted and fell to the ground. While he was unconscious, he vaguely heard the woman's cold and ruthless words, "I spent so much effort to create this vessel, and it was destroyed just like that. Damn it! Container? What container?" The barbaric Blood-Bone King couldn't think any further and sunk into darkness. Feng Gu looked at the unconscious Blood-Bone Barbarian King. The sword in his hand was about to pierce through his heart. Suddenly, as if he had thought of something, his movements paused. There was a cruel sneer in his eyes. "She threw the sword on the ground, destroying my vessel. How can I let you die so easily? There's a place that is absolutely suitable for you." Feng Gu directly carried the barbaric Blood-Bone King on her shoulder. The breeze blew the red veil on Feng Ji's face, revealing the red veil, that face which had been covered. Chapter 45-20. Her red lips were like fire, absolutely gorgeous. Exquisite facial features, bright and elegant. Coupled with that pair of soul-stirring eyes, the entire person was breathtakingly beautiful. Bright and flamboyant, almost able to overshadow everything in the world. Yiqing Luo's pupils constricted fiercely. Her body stiffened as well. Because, that face that came into view, was almost the same as her. Yes. The degree of similarity was at least 80% and above. Except that Yiqing Luo looked more immature and beautiful. Whereas Feng Gu had the maturity and beauty of a woman. What was going on? Yiqing Luo subconsciously touched her own face. Countless thoughts were surging in her mind. A face that was almost the same. Feng Ji's daughter had a divine phoenix profound jade heart. She had it too. Could it be? Was she really that little baby? But, wasn't that baby swallowed by the barbaric Blood-Bone King? 10,000 years had passed. How could she possibly grow up in Nirvana Realm's Three Springs sect? This wasn't right. The time didn't match. Yiqing Luo's thoughts were in a mess. These thoughts made her heart beat extremely fast. Actually, she had guessed this from the beginning. However, he had never associated himself with the God Emperor's true body. No. This was too confusing. She really couldn't make sense of this relationship. Yiqing Luo rubbed her face, her gaze suddenly fell on her wrist, that circle of cherry blossom petals. Her hand, pressed on the azure dew bracelet. Right. Look for Old Man Tsang. Old Man Tsang had seen the sovereign of God before. He was clearer than anyone else about what happened 10,000 years ago. But, no matter how Yi Qing Luo called for Old Man Tsang, her and Old Man Tsang's spirit could not connect at all. But her azure dew bracelet was not affected. On this side, Yi Qing Luo was still in shock. On the other side, Fenggu had dragged the barbaric blood-bone king away. Yi Qing Luo clenched her fists, thinking of that face under Feng Ji's veil. She leaped up and quickly chased up to Fenggu. Feng Ji's eyes were cold, her eyes were filled with killing intent, dragging the barbaric blood-bone king at an extremely fast speed. Yi Qing Luo was worried that she would be discovered by Fenggu and wanted to follow behind. For a moment, he could not keep up with the two people in front of him. After Feng Ji's figure completely disappeared from the range of his senses, Yi Qing Luo blacked out. Immediately after, his body trembled. When there was light in front of him again, she was already deep in the mountains and deep in the forest. In front of him was a huge black hole that surged with thick black fog. It looked extremely horrifying and terrifying. In front of him were Fenggu and the barbaric blood-bone king. Yi Qing Luo was slightly stunned. That feeling just now didn't feel like the feeling of jumping to the next memory. Moreover, the two people in front of him were also in the scene just now. What was going on? Do you see what that is? Fenggu threw the blood-bone barbarian king to the ground. The blood-bone barbarian king had already woken up from the jolting. He opened his somewhat turbid eyes and looked at the black holes that filled the sky. His expression changed slightly. Fenggu smiled coldly, his eyes filled with ruthlessness. Do you think that it's so easy to swallow the container that I've tried so hard to get? Letting you die is letting you off too easily. Her long sword moved and directly stabbed into the barbaric blood-bone king's shoulder, hanging him up. The barbaric blood-bone king groaned in pain. Blood seeped out from his shoulder, soaking his robe. But he was stubborn and refused to make a sound. A pair of eyes filled with hatred stared fiercely at Fenggu. End of this chapter. Chapter 45-21. Hate me? Fenggu sneered, don't you love me to death? When she said this, her eyes were filled with disdain. As though she disdained his feelings. Or as though she was extremely disdainful of his love for her. Blood-bone barbaric king was in so much pain that his vision blurred. He gritted his teeth and groaned, word by word, now I know. How silly I was in the past, to actually like a slut like you, for so many years. So much that he didn't even care about his life. Causing himself to end up in such a state. Then you're not too stupid, at least now you know my true colors. Fenggu seemed to be very happy, her eyes were filled with coldness. You'd better kill me. Otherwise. I will definitely kill you. Blood-bone barbaric king gritted his teeth and roared. But he had lost too much blood and the pain in his body. It made him almost speechless. Fenggu looked at him coldly, the corners of her lips curled into a cold arc. Kill you? Of course I can't kill you. She pointed to the front, at the sky full of black holes. This is something I specially made in the Nirvana realm, it's still in the experimental stage, help me. Guard this place well. Fenggu casually threw him into that black hole. Blood-bone barbaric king groaned. And was thrown into the black hole. Instantly, countless black chi gushed out from that black hole. Like thousands of hands, grabbing hold of blood-bone barbaric king and swallowing him. Blood-bone barbaric king's shrill scream was heard from the black hole. Those blood-curdling screams. It made one's heart tremble. Yi Qing Luo's heart also trembled. Blood-bone barbaric king was an especially tolerant person. Even the long sword pierced through his chest. He didn't even make a sound when the long sword pierced into his shoulder and lifted him up. But when he was thrown into the black hole, he let out a blood-curdling scream. That showed the pain in the black hole. It was an unbearable pain for him. Yiqing Luo stared at Feng Gu without blinking. Her heart was still trembling. Feng Ji's eyes had no trace of emotion. It was as though she didn't care about anything about Bloodbone Barbaric King. What was she trying to do? Who's that? Suddenly, Feng Ji's eyes turned cold as she reprimanded. He raised his sword and flipped it in his palm. Yiqing Luo instantly felt a chill down her spine. It was like being stared at by a venomous snake. It was bone-chilling. Her heart skipped a beat as she met Feng Ji's murderous gaze. She quickly backed away. However, how could her speed compare to the Divine Emperor's? In the blink of an eye, Feng Ji's long sword had already pierced her eyeball. Just then, when it was still a little distance away from the eyeball, Yiqing Luo only felt her vision turning black. The surrounding space began to distort rapidly. As the ground shook, she felt as if she had fallen into an abyss. His whole body kept falling down. What was going on? Just now, it felt like he was jumping to the next part of his memory. Why was she falling from the sky in the next memory? Yiqing Luo wanted to flop around. However, he could not move his limbs at all. Until the restraints on his body were broken. Only then did her vision regain its brightness. However, right now, she was floating in mid-air. Their surroundings were pitch black, and they couldn't see their surroundings clearly. She tried to move. She discovered that she could actually walk in mid-air. It was like her soul was the same. What kind of situation was this? Bone Lord. Suddenly, a soft voice was heard from below. Yiqing Luo was stunned as she swiftly floated towards the voice. Chapter 45-22. In front of her, it was a piece of Black Sea. Two figures were moving bit by bit as they walked in the Black Sea. Walking? Sea? No. Not right. This was not the sea. Yiqing Luo's figure slowly leaned downwards. He could clearly see the figures of those people. They were that lady called Gu San and Gu Yi. Bloodbone Barbaric King's secret guards. These two of them were of course not those few secret guards that Yiqing Luo had interacted with in the outside world. The Gu residence's secret guards were ranked according to their numbers. This batch of secret guards should be the earliest batch of secret guards that followed the Bloodbone Barbaric King. Bone Lord, where are you? Gu San called out softly, looking at his expression, he seemed to be struggling. Yiqing Luo carefully avoided the two of them and landed at a position slightly behind the both of them. She could see clearly. The surroundings were not a piece of Black Sea. It was obviously a ball of thick black fog. A piece of pitch-black darkness. There was no place to hide. She could only maintain a distance as she followed behind those two secret guards. The two secret guards' attention had been focused on searching for the Bloodbone Barbaric King and did not notice anything strange. Just at this moment, suddenly, there were a few cracking sounds in front of him. She saw the entire sky filled with thick black fog. One by one, the blood-colored bones stepped out. Kacha kacha. Even her ears were filled with the sound of the bones colliding. Yiqing Luo then saw it clearly. Under the thick black, there was a large patch of densely packed blood bones. And her surroundings were also covered with large patches of blood bones. But what shocked her was her body, penetrated through every single blood bone. The densely packed, connected blood bones, all passed through her body, as though they could not sense her existence at all. Yi Qing Luo stretched out her hand to touch the blood bones. Her hand went through the blood bones. Yi Qing Luo's heart thumped. Her gaze swiftly turned towards the Gu residence's secret guards. Was it these blood bones, an illusion? Or was it her problem? Following the densely packed blood bones appearing, Gu Yi and Gu San's searching footsteps stopped. Gu San raised his head, looking at the blood bones that were almost as tall as a two-story building, his eyes filled with worry. Bone Lord. Why are you looking for us? The two Bone Mansion's secret guards stood away from the bloody bones. They also seemed to be very afraid of touching the blood bones. Kacha. Kacha. Along with the sound of bones cracking, a head slowly slid down the joints and appeared in front of the two of them. It was the head of the barbaric Blood Bone King. His face was pale and his eyes were filled with malice. He was like a trapped beast, so gloomy that it made people's hearts tremble. Take this out. The Blood Bone Barbarian King's hoarse voice sounded. A small baby wrapped in a soft substance was thrown into the arms of Bone San. Gu San hurriedly received it. Then, she looked at the baby in her arms. His cheeks were pink, and he looked like he was sleeping peacefully. Her eyes reddened. Bone Lord, you spent so much effort to get in touch with us just to let us bring the child out? Gu San's voice was choked with emotion. Get out! The barbaric Blood Bone King shouted sternly. Gu San hugged the baby tightly, his eyes were red as he looked at the barbaric Blood Bone King's current appearance. This child is the child of the Emperor of God. You became like this because of the Emperor of God. Bone Lord, why do you have to hurt yourself like this for her child? You don't want to listen to this God's words? The barbaric Blood Bone King's voice became hoarser and sharper. After this loud shout, he couldn't stop coughing violently. Chapter 45-23. Bone Monarch. Bone 1 hurriedly said, Bone 3 is just concerned about you. Back then, Bone Lord did not devour this baby. Instead, he hid it in his own blood and bones. Feng Gu was deceived. When he was thrown into the black hole by Feng Gu, not only did Bone Lord have to fight against the evil aura in the black hole, but he also had to fight against it. He also had to protect the baby as much as possible. Until now, only then did Bone Lord have enough power to establish contact with the dark guards of the Bone Residence. It was not easy for them to rush to the Nirvana realm and the black hole that was suppressing the Bone Lord. Bone Lord's request was not for them to think of a way to break the seal on the black hole and rescue him. Instead, he asked them to leave with the baby. See the baby. They would think of the culprit who caused their Bone Lord to be reduced to such a state. How could they be willing to take their children out? You have no right to tell me what to do. The barbaric Blood Bone Monarch's voice became sharper. The blood and bones around them tightly wrapped around the two of them. Take the child out and take good care of him. Don't hand it over to anyone. The two realized the Blood Bone Barbarian Monarch's intention and immediately said, Bone Monarch. Tell us, is there any way to save you? We can't take care of this child. Bang! Before the two of them could finish their conversation, he was lifted up by the Blood Bone Barbarian King and thrown out of the thick black fog. After a while, silence returned to the surroundings. The barbaric Blood Bone King also did not move for a long time. Yi Qing Luo saw the pain in his eyes. Yi Qing Luo pursed her lips slightly. He slowly walked towards the Blood Bone Barbarian King. He was not worried that the barbaric Blood Bone King would discover him. For this place, she was just a soul. The Bone Mansion's secret guards could touch the Blood Bone Barbarian King's blood bones. And she couldn't. She could float around in this place. This meant that she no longer had a physical body. As expected, she approached the Blood Bone Barbarian King. The barbaric Bloodbone King did not move either. The skull embedded in the bloody bone looked like a statue. Until Yi Qing Luo approached. Only then did he vaguely hear a few sounds, Qing Luo. Qing Luo. Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo's heart immediately tightened. His eyes widened. What the barbaric Bloodbone King shouted was her name. Just as she was about to lean in closer to hear more clearly, a voice suddenly rang out. Suddenly. Her hand felt like it was being sucked by a huge suction force. She didn't have time to react. His body was suddenly sucked up by the suction force. Then, his body fell heavily to the ground. Ah! The feeling of weightlessness made Yi Qing Luo cry out in shock. Suddenly, he opened his eyes. What greeted his eyes was a patch of dazzling sunlight. It stung her eyes and hurt a little. She raised her hand to cover her eyes. A large palm covered her eyes. His slender fingers massaged her eyes with just the right amount of strength. The familiar scent of sandalwood seeped into his nose. Yi Qing Luo's hands grabbed that huge palm as she turned around abruptly. She saw the face that she longed for even in her dreams. Her face was reflected in his obsidian-like eyes. Yi Qing Luo's eyes widened, ah. Ah Xian. The person in front of her was Dmo Xian. She raised her hand and pinched Dmo Xian's cheek, giving him a hard pinch. Are you real? Surely I'm not still in the memory space, right? Chapter 45-24. Dmo Xian laughed softly. His long slender hand held her little hand and clasped it in his palm. You're back. He held on to her hand and slowly placed it on his face. Finally back. He murmured softly as he slowly closed his eyes. Feeling her scent, her warmth. Men rarely showed such a harmless expression on her face. Yi Qing Luo's heart was in a mess. From the man's big palm helping her to rub her eyes. From his aura enveloping her body and mind. She was certain. This Dmo Xian. He was her Xian. She had returned to the real world. This was no longer the barbaric Bloodbone King's memory. Yi Qing Luo's eyes gazed deeply at the man's elegant face. His picturesque eyebrows revealed an obvious tired look. His thick eyelashes spread out, casting an arc, but it was unable to hide the purple under his eyes. How long had she stayed in the barbaric Bloodbone King's memory? This man, how long had he been looking for her? Yi Qing Luo's hand slowly covered his eyes. Xian, I'm sorry, I made you worried. I know nothing will happen. Dmo Xian closed her hand and placed it by his lips as he gently kissed it. I just miss. Knowing that nothing would happen to her was one thing. Worrying was another. I miss too. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled into a sweet smile as she generously sent her lips over and kissed him. Dmo Xian's arms wrapped around her petite body. Until the young lady gave a low laugh and that soft little tongue drilled into his mouth. His body shook. He suddenly pressed the back of the young lady's head and deepened the kiss. Their breaths intertwined. Like a life and death entanglement. They used their own way to declare their longing for each other. After some time, Dmo Xian then released the young lady and hugged her tightly in his arms. Yi Qing Luo could clearly hear the man's strong and powerful heartbeat. Once. From her eardrums, it penetrated her heart. Yi Qing Luo's brows curved as her little hand followed his waist and slowly slid down. I thought that you wouldn't be able to restrain yourself and continue to do some overboard things. Dmo Xian clasped her hand, his eyes filled with warning. Don't stir up the fire, if you continue. I don't care if I'm tired or not. Yi Qing Luo hurriedly retracted her hand and pushed her little head against his chest. I'm tired, I'm so tired that I can't move, I can't take advantage of others' difficulties. Her hands were no longer messy. His little head began to rub against the fire. Dmo Xian looked at the furry little head in his arms as a helpless yet pampering smile flashed past his eyes. He held the girl's delicate body tightly and stopped her from teasing him any further. If you tease me again, I'll take it that you want it. Yiqing Luo giggled as she stuck her head out from his arms and circled her arms around his neck. All right, I won't tease you anymore. Isn't it so hard to see you? I'm happy. Dmo Xian bit her nose and his low and hoarse voice revealed a bewitching magnetism. Now let's play, tonight. Let's try. Yiqing Luo's cheeks blushed slightly. The two of them joked around for a while. The warm and sweet atmosphere made Yiqing Luo's exhausted heart finally find peace. She leaned into Dmo Xian's arms as she played with his slender fingers and asked casually, "That's right, the one who entered the ancestral hall with me was that Palace Lord Ming from Secluded Palace. Have you seen him?" Download address, phone reading. Chapter 45-25. Dmo Xian lowered his head and bit her earlobe. The strength between his lips and teeth was a little strong. Yiqing Luo felt itchy and painful, her body was still trembling slightly. "Just asking a question and you need to be jealous, please let me go, listening to the young girl's soft pleading. The man then let go of her earlobe. But, his thin lips were still attached to her ear. Between the rubbing of the lips, there was a scorching heat. He came out from the ancestral hall 2 days ago. Dmo Xian's voice sounded a little low, as if he was in a bad mood. He was also the one who told me that he had entered the blood-bone barbaric king's memory. Yiqing Luo blinked her eyes and clicked her tongue. Looks like, Baisu really hates me. Baisu? Dmo Xian frowned slightly. What has it got to do with Baisu? Yiqing Luo pounced on him and pressed him under her body. What exactly is the relationship between you and Baisu? Dmo Xian supported her and let her lie firmly in his arms. He looked down at her and asked, "What did Baisu do? Answer my question first." Yiqing Luo climbed up his chest and both her hands pinched his face. "After you answer my question, I will then know what kind of tone I should use to complain." Dmo Xian's pupils contracted slightly. He held Yiqing Luo's slender waist. In his heart, he had roughly guessed something. But, he still followed Yiqing Luo's words. "To me, she is both a teacher and a friend. Since I have memories, she has been by my side, like an elder sister, teaching me a lot, how to survive in this world." Since you have memories. Yiqing Luo caught the main point. Amnesia? Not considered as amnesia. Dmo Xian shook his head. Just can't remember the things in the past. But, those to me, are not important. How can it not be important? Yiqing Luo sat up straight, her little butt sat on his stomach, both hands clutching his lapel. "I said, I don't seem to have heard anything about family." "You've actually forgotten about it. Don't you want to know, who is your father? Don't want to find them and ask why they separated?" The girl lowered her head and met his eyes. Her soft silky black hair cascaded down and landed on Dmo Xian's body and face. His hand gently rested on the young girl's slender waist as he gently curled his lips into a smile. "With Lil Luo heir by my side, it is enough." He did not have much need for his past memories. He thought about what had happened in the past. To him, it was not difficult at all. It was just that he didn't want to, and couldn't be bothered to think about it. In his memory, having Lil Luo heir was his greatest happiness. The man's words instantly softened Yiqing Luo's heart. She pursed her lips and patted his chest weakly. "You only know how to seduce me with words of love and move me. I can't beat you." Dmo Xian pinched her waist. "Now can you tell me what happened between you and Baisu?" Yiqing Luo pouted her lips and snorted. "Even if Baisu is a teacher and a friend, I still want to complain." She rambled on and on about how Bai Mei had been deceived by the Palace of Gloomy Shadows and used as a sacrifice to unlock the barbaric Bloodbone King's memories. She also complained about Baisu's attitude towards her in an aggrieved manner. After that she hammered his chest. You had to wait for the Palace Lord of Gloomy Shadows to tell you, only then did you know that I was in the Ancestral Hall. Baisu saw me entering the barbaric Bloodbone King's memories with her own eyes, so she obviously did not tell you on purpose. Download address, phone reading. You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.